As I said, these are just regular people you're about to hear. Regular people. And so, if you're wondering whether there's more to this life than just the short physical existence that we have, you're going to want to listen during the evening, and I think at some point you'll begin to convince yourself, and for that reason alone, it's well worth the listen. East of the Rockies, you're on the air, and the first caller this night, good morning.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Art.
Hi, what is your first name?
My first name is Dave.
Yo, Dave. Where are you and what you up to?
I am in northeastern Ohio, and I am working.
You're working?
Yes.
Oh, you're working. What kind of work do you do?
I am a police officer.
A police officer. Okay. That makes it particularly interesting. Something happened while you were on duty?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, really? All right. Fire away.
Well, I've been a police officer about 10 and a half years, and on the south end of the city in which I work, there are two large estates right across the street from one another. And about 4 years ago, my buddy Joe and I were working the midnight shift, and we got called to one of the estates about 12:30, quarter to 1 in the morning. Somebody had thought maybe there were some deer hunters on the property. They have a large wooded area on the property there. So we went to check it out.
Was it a call, people with guns, that kind of deal?
They got, all we got was that they thought maybe there were deer hunters in there. I don't think they actually heard shots. They may have seen.
Yeah, well, still, if you know there's a gun at the call, your head's up. All right.
Well, absolutely, yeah. We weren't going to venture actually into the woods until we figured out what we had. So
I hear you.
We got there, and we were standing along the edge of the wood line, trying to listen to see if we heard voices or, movement or anything in the woods. And after a few minutes, I heard, as clear as day, no question about it, the sound of a small child laughing. And I immediately turned my flashlight on and I started looking. It sounded like it came in from just a few feet inside the wood line, and I could see probably 15, 20 feet into the wood line.
Right.
And I'm looking, and I don't see anything, and I don't hear any movement, no leaves rustling, no nothing. And when I had turned my light on, Joe had turned his on at the same time, and I asked him, I said, "Did you hear what I just heard?" And he looked at me and he said, "I think so. It sounded like a little kid laughing."
Mm-hmm. Last thing you'd expect to find in the woods late at night.
Exactly. So I said, okay. So we looked around a little bit, and we didn't see anything. Hung around for maybe another 10 minutes, and nothing came of the call. So we left, and we had referred to it a couple of times over the years, just kind of jokingly. Well, fast forward ahead to about 4 months ago, Joe and another officer got called back to the same estate, this time for an alarm at the main house. They got there, and they were met by the caretaker, who explained that the power line had been cut to the house, and that's why the alarm had gone off. And they were standing outside talking to him.
Right.
And they were near the woods, and Joe was kind of looking around a little uneased. And the other officer, Ron, asked him what the problem was, and Joe said, "These woods just kind of give me the creeps." And that was all he said. Mm-hmm. And the caretaker looked at him and kind of chuckled and said, "Why? Have you heard the kids laughing at you from the woods?"
Oh, really?
And Joe was obviously dumbfounded and said, "Actually, yeah, I did. What's the story?" Well, apparently, according to the caretaker, the same family had owned this property for generations and generations. And years ago, one of the first couple of generations to own the property had two small children that used to play in the woods there, and they both drowned in the pond that was in the woods.
Yes.
And ever since then, according to the caretaker, the family and the maintenance people and caretakers and visitors and whatnot have all reported hearing these kids laughing from the woods.
God, that just scares the hell out of me, and I'll tell you why. Have you heard some of the shows that I've done with EVP?
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, I know, and so many of them appear to be small children, and as you're considering life after death, man, the last thing you want to imagine is that a child remains on this earth as it was after something, for example, like that. Right. I mean, that's to me, that's horrifying. And even to the EVP people, it's horrifying. And so there you go. And so, so you think that what was heard was a ghost, and it was a child.
Well, I know when I heard it, there was no mistake in it when I heard it. And like I said, Joe said he heard the same thing. I didn't have to ask him, did you hear the kid laugh? He just said, I heard what sounded like a kid laughing.
God, I really appreciate the call. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Art.
All right, take care. There's a police officer, and as I said, the last thing you want to contemplate is that if there is another life, that it's spent on this earth, perhaps in the same form eternally. There is one counterbalance argument to that possibility, and that is that it is only an echo of you, that your soul has moved on, and that what remains to be heard, like by those two police officers, is only an echo of some sort of your life. First-time caller line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
My name is Dan from Greenfield Park, Quebec.
Hello, Dan.
Yes. Just about the last caller, I realized that the story was the children had died on the estate, and the woods may very well be haunted, but it has to be remembered that a lot of times you are called with children's laughter because it's very tempting to go and help a distressed child.
Well, that would be.
You really don't know what
true.
you're going to have when you get there, you know?
Yeah, that certainly would be true. Almost anybody would attempt to rescue a child, and I really should have asked them why they didn't venture into the woods, but anyway.
Yeah, that's not why you called, right?
Yes.
Okay, my story. I was an Army brat. My father was in the Canadian Forces. And when I was around 10 years old, it was the mid-1950s, we were stationed in Western Command in Alberta, Canada, and it was a desolate posting, the old story of the prairies where you can watch your dog run away for 5 days. You know?
Yes.
And so my mother originally was from Glasgow, Scotland, and she had come over as a young girl, so she had been in Canada for 30 years or so, or 25 years. And her only contact at home was in the old days. It was, you know, he didn't phone. It was the old foreign airmail letters, and they went back and forth over the years, but she had never seen her family or visited Scotland before. So one evening, this is back we're in Alberta, we had gone to bed. We'd been in bed for hours, and my mother went up to bed, and in the tradition of the 50s, my father locked up and secured all the windows, and he followed her to bed. And sometime in the small hours of the morning, my mother woke up and really felt an urge to go downstairs and pour herself a glass of water from the kitchen sink, something she can't ever remember having done before.
Uh-huh.
So she simply used the light from the staircase to get down the stairs, and as she got to the bottom of the stairs, she just froze, because sitting in her armchair in the living room was an old woman. And the old woman calmly gazed at her. My mother, it was probably a few seconds, when my mother said felt she was rooted there for minutes. And then she was terrified. She ran up the stairs and she broke into her and my father's bedroom crying. And he woke up and he said, okay, well, I'll go downstairs and find out what's going on. So he came down the stairs and checked all the doors, all the windows, and of course there was no one in the house.
Nothing, huh?
No one. So the next morning, when they got up, my mother was still pretty upset. She hadn't got much sleep. My father said, well, I can stay home today and, take care of the kids, whatever, and I'll go to work and just be with you, And she said, no, go ahead to work. I'll be okay. I'll have coffee with friends and I'll get over it. So he went off to work and he came back within an hour. Because when he arrived at work, there was a telegram on his desk, and he opened a telegram, and the telegram said that my grandmother, my mother's mother, had died the night before when lightning struck the tenement houses in Glasgow.
Wow.
In the ensuing fire.
And so there she was.
And she was, my mother hadn't visited her, but, the old lady she saw would have put her in the long brown hair. Now then, when she looked back, it would have been exactly as she would picture my...
Do you think that it's that the departed wants, I don't know, somehow to comfort the living, let them know there is still an existence, I'm still here, something, I don't know.
it's really something, because they repeated your 1993 show, I believe, last night.
That's right.
And you had at the end of the program, you summed up by saying that before the souls depart, they want to visit the friends they perhaps want to.
All right, buddy. I really appreciate the call. That's what would make sense to me. You would want to communicate, of course, to you, the closest one to you, to let that person know that you're all right, that it's not all over, that things are going to be okay, and they too will be okay. Very few by percentage make it. But that's a pretty interesting story, I would say, wouldn't you? I'm presuming they compared photographs and that the identity was firmly made, but you can see why somebody would want to get back. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Glenn from North Bend, Oregon.
Hello, Glenn. How are you doing?
Doing great. My little story starts when about 25 years ago, 17 years old, and we used to take a shortcut through the woods, Freeport, New York, Long Island. And heading towards the shortcut, it saved me about 12 blocks and had to go through like a marshy swamp area. About 100 yards in, it's dark. It's in the back of an old railroad station place, had a low-lit light. Could barely see. You could see 20, 30 yards or something. About 100 yards into here, had to follow a trail along the fence. I sat down to smoke a cigarette. And I'm sitting there, 17-year-old, I'm not scared of much, especially growing up in New York, all kinds of surprises.
Man, when you're 17, you're eternal.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's right.
Until after this experience.
Uh-huh.
And out in the marsh, I'm sitting down, and out in the marsh, I hear some dog tags, they clanking together, and I didn't think much of it. I thought of dogs out there just goofing off. And as I sat there, the chains just started coming closer, the tags, they were clinking and clanking, and started coming closer.
Huh.
So I'm thinking a dog's on its way, and no big deal, no need for alarm. And as my ears, I couldn't really see, to my left was a creek that came out of a pipe that came under the property, and it wrapped around in front of me. About a 10, 12-yard drop to the creek. The creek's 10 yards. Then the sandbank on the other side. And then a bunch of marshy, type small trees. And then you could see maybe 10, 20 yards past the creek. And here come those clanking sounds coming closer and closer. And my ears were telling me that should be visible soon. Should be coming into my range.
I ought to be seeing whatever this is, yes.
And I just still thought it was a dog, so I'm expecting to hear a little critter, coming through the grass and the leaves and whatnot.
Yes.
And I hear 2 footsteps.
Huh.
I hear something with 2 footsteps.
As in thump, thump.
Well, yeah, thump, thump, and it's coming towards me.
Not a little French poodle.
No, not a French poodle, not a German shepherd. Just 2 distinct footsteps coming through, and you can hear the grass, walking, and the dog chains are still clinking. And that's about when my alarm went off. I'm thinking, okay, this is a problem. There's no way you can think that this is anything but a problem.
Something big.
Something's wrong. And my ears were telling me that I ought to be able to see this thing. And it should be right there on the other side of the creek. And this kind of dragged on for a couple of minutes. It didn't just walk up.
You ever seen a deer that was being hunted, whether by man or a predator? It doesn't matter. The deer, usually just before it's pounced on or shot, it gets this invisible communication, and it suddenly knows it's in mortal danger. Kind of like that, you mean?
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking serial killer. I'm thinking something I didn't know.
Just bad.
But just bad, and I was ready to go. Because I should have seen it. My ears were telling me it was there, but I couldn't see it. And I'm looking around trying to figure, should I go back to the right or should I go to the left? And I'm in New York, so it's not necessarily always a friendly place. And I'm out in the middle of this sump. And you can't see that good. To get to the back street of the neighborhood I was heading to, I had to make a left, about 10 yards, go across the pipe to the right, go another 25 yards, and then up the side of the hill and bring me to the dead-end street up there into the neighborhood where that'd have about 30 more blocks to my house.
Mm-hmm.
And the trail on the other side went away from the creek. So whatever should have been down there on that bank would have had about a 30-yard trip to where it was, and I had a 30-yard trip. So I got up and bolted. I figured I could beat it.
Uh-huh.
I hang to the left, run to the right, and I'm in full sprint. And I'm athletic type. I'm 6'2".
I understand running. If you're in that kind of fear, running is good.
Running is good.
Yeah, okay.
And just as I got to the point where I would go up this hill, 10, 12-foot shadow, red, beady eyes, stepped up from the bank and was standing right.
God, I hate red eyes.
I hate red eyes.
I mean, of all the... So, how 10 feet?
10 or 12.
10 or 12 feet? And red eyes.
Huge. Had
right. Well,
horns.
see, after that, for me, it wouldn't be a problem because I would have a heart attack and fall down dead, out of danger completely, and on to the next life.
That would have been okay, but I froze. It has horns. It's just an outline. It's dark as dark could be.
Horns?
Well, it had all you could see was an outline. You couldn't see it. Looking into this creature,
Yes.
It was as dark as space.
Yes, sir.
Red beady eyes. Beady eyes, not just red glowing eyes, red beady eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I froze. I just stuck. And I don't know how long I was there, sitting there contemplating some kind of communication coming at me, like step into me or something. I didn't know, but I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. So I did what any red-blooded American 17-year-old would do in this situation. I turned around and I ran.
You ran.
And I ran. And I didn't stop running. I ran all the way home, and this is like 40 blocks.
Yeah.
You know, this is like 2 miles. And my mom and dad, I came home sweating and huffing, and my parents kind of looked at me odd. And, you know, I was a good-raised, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, Catholic boy. And I was in almost shock, and I couldn't explain to them what had happened. I didn't dare. They would have committed me. You know, they would have sent me to private school or something. So
you've kept this to yourself ever since?
I've told one person in my life.
But not your mom, not your dad?
No, because I grew up in Catholic schools, and I tried to tell my priest.
All right. Briefly, because we don't have a lot of time, what do you think you encountered? What do you think that was?
It was just a definition to tell me that life just isn't what I had figured out it was at that point. It was just something that it alienated me from what I had considered normal.
There's no chance it was a dream, obviously.
Oh, no.
No drugs, none of that baloney.
No.
So you're certain you know what you saw. What do you now think? This is years later. What do you think you saw?
I think I saw a bridge towards wizardry or shamanism or something, that I had an opportunity, had I done something maybe, other than being totally afraid,
yes,
that maybe I could have maybe launched myself into another plane, because certain things have happened over the last 25 years.
You mean, for example, if you had approached that thing, if you had just sort of said, okay, let's rock, then you might just be gone. I mean, one of those people that just disappears, and you'd be somewhere else right now. No question about it. The most important question in life is about death, isn't it? And you have all of that short life to consider it. And that's what we do on nights like this. We'll just keep the stories coming. You be the judge of the person. Now, so far, I judge them to be pretty regular people. How about you? West of the Rockies, you are on the air. Good morning.
Hi, Art. This is Kyle from San Antonio.
Hey, Kyle. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. I have a story for you, something that happened when I was just a hair over 4 years old, something that scared me so badly back then and still does now, about 25 years later. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
So you remember, you have clear memories of being 4. Some people don't. I guess I do, and even further back than that, I can actually remember being in the crib.
Yeah, I do have some very good memories of, 3 or 4 years old around that time, but this one particular incident kind of seared itself into my brain because of how bizarre it was.
All right, what happened?
All right, my family lived in Northern California at the time, town of Chico, and we had a motorhome, a very big motorhome that we would take trips in. And one summer night, I think it must have been a 4th of July weekend, because my parents had decided to just take me and a couple of family friends on a little evening trip to some public park that was a little ways away along the Sacramento River. So we were in the motorhome, and we never ended up making it to the fireworks festival because of this thing that I saw. Still don't know what it is. I'm hoping maybe you or some of your viewers might have an idea.
I don't have viewers. I have listeners radio, so you're going to have to describe it.
Okay. Well, while we were on the road, there's a dark, unlit highway, a heavily forested area, as I remember. At some point on that trip, I decided to go to the back of the motorhome, away from everyone else, because there was a window right next to the bunk bed that I like to look out of. And I went back there, looked out the window, and like I said, it was pretty much pitch black outside. You couldn't really see anything, but I was watching the shadows of the trees going by, and all of a sudden, something appeared in the window right across from me. It was a face. It looked like a man's face, except it was hanging upside down.
Oh, brother. Now, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You're in a motorhome. You're moving, or you're moving, right?
Yes, we were on.
Because you said things were moving by the window.
It must have been a little state highway or something.
And so here's an upside down face, like this thing's on your roof looking down at you.
Yeah. Well, that would be the easiest explanation.
Oh crap.
Yeah. It had a.
And so, what did you do?
Well, it's obviously frightened me very badly. It had these glowing eyes. The face itself had a blank expression, but the eyes looked like they wanted to do something.
Let me guess.
Very bad to me. So,
glowing red.
Well, I'm actually a little bit colorblind, Art.
Glowing will do. Oh man, that's.
They were glowing, and they didn't look very friendly. So
yeah, oh no.
I went screaming up to the front of the motorhome.
Yeah.
And freaking out, telling my parents and the couple of friends that were with us that I saw, a bad man's face looking at me through the window. And I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why they believed me, but they obviously saw that I was scared enough that I thought I had seen something.
Yeah, if someone's scared enough, you're going to read truth into what they're saying. So what then?
They pulled the motorhome over on the side of a road.
I would too.
Yeah, my dad peeked his head out of the door or whatever, and he saw someone on the roof of the motorhome. And so he ducked back inside, and he got his friend that was with us, who was, I think he was an ex-Marine or an ex-Navy guy, a very big, tough guy.
Yeah.
So was my dad. They weren't guys that would be afraid of a hitchhiker on the
So
roof
they both went out there and did what?
Well, they said that they saw what looked like a little skinny college-age guy running away into a field, and they said that they chased him into the field, but he disappeared in the field.
Disappeared.
And, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what my dad meant by that when I was talking with him about that.
All right, skip then to this. What do you think you saw?
I am not sure to this day. I just got the impression that that whatever it was that was looking at me through that window did not have good intentions at all.
I gotcha. All right, thank you very, very much. Going down the road, you've done that, right? Whether in a car or a motorhome, just looking out the window, watching the trees and the scenery go by, and a head upside down with glowing eyes pops upside down, staring you right in the face. Yeah. Hi there, you're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with, Ghost to Ghost AM. Okay, Dana, we don't allow last names on the air, so I had to bleep that out. So suffice to say, it is Dana calling from where?
Calling from Arizona.
All
Thanks
right.
to Clear Channel and KFYI, your signal's coming in loud and strong over this Halloween Eve tonight.
Way to rock with the promos. So you have a story for us?
I have a story. I have a son, Dylan, who, when he's about the same age as I was when this happened. And the story I'd like to dedicate tonight for all the children, the listeners, who either their parents have said they could listen to your show or they've had to wait for their mother and father to go to sleep. So
I
they can
honestly
listen to your
hope it's
show.
not too many children listening. Really, I do.
There might be a few. A long time ago, when I was young, I was very fortunate because my best friend was also my cousin. And it had been a Friday night. And I was going over to my aunt's and uncle's farm to do a sleepover with my cousin Kelly. And late that night, it was a great night, but we had heard noises coming from his window, from the outside of the farm window. Now, I'm sure that many of the young listeners from time to time might have heard noises coming from their window. Now, my uncle and aunt had a big farm, but the farm was right next to the old Mesa Cemetery. So that's where these noises were coming from. Early Saturday morning, we got up. Kelly and I loaded our Daisy Red Ryder BB guns and proceeded to...
Heavy armament.
Yes, heavy armament of a time that's long gone here from things like that.
Yes.
But we took our guns and loaded them with BBs and got ready to sneak out of the house to go over to the cemetery to see what could have been going on last night and the noises that we heard. As Kelly and I were leaving out very quietly out the door, his two younger brothers, Steve and John, had woken up, and they saw us and they wanted to come. So in lieu of waking my Aunt Helen or Uncle Wayne up to let them know what we were doing, we took them with us too. So off we went into the early morning with our Red Ryder BB guns for an adventure.
Hunting ghosts with BB guns. That's good.
Exactly. We were a little scared, but we couldn't let Kelly's two younger brothers, Steve and John, know that something might be wrong.
Yes.
And as we got to the cemetery, it was very ominous, and my heart started to race. And they have these old cypress trees there, the Italian cypress trees that get so big. And the large trees in the cemetery cast a dark shadow. And as we walked, you could feel your heartbeat moving. And then the shadows seemed to be following us as we walked down the long, lonely cemetery road. Now, as we walked, Art, we came to what looked like a pile of fresh dirt. And as we got there, sure enough, there's this pile of dirt about 4 or 5 feet in height.
Pretty big pile of dirt.
It was a big pile of dirt. Now, if you've ever seen a gopher dig a hole, how it throws the dirt out, you get the fresh dirt, and then it kind of starts to dry.
Yeah.
And this is what this pile was like. There was no shovel, digging, chumps, or anything. This was a pile of fresh dirt like that.
Got it.
By the pile of dirt was a hole that was about 7 or 8 feet. And by the hole in the pile of dirt laid a casket that was all charred and burned out.
Oh,
now,
man.
We looked at the casket, not knowing what might be in the casket. We're going to see a body, where we're going to see bones, what we were going to see.
I'd be voting for a body, probably.
Well, there's like a smell of a burned, kind of a singeing burn smell.
Oh.
We get to the casket, and we look into the casket, and what should we see? Not a thing. The casket was still warm to the touch, but the inside of the total casket was completely charred, completely burned out.
Oh, man.
Now, Art, as young boys, we didn't know what to do, so we thought we'd get Doug, Mark, or Craig, and they were some friends that were about 2 or 3 years older than us, and we figured they'd know what to do.
Yes.
So we ran off down to get Doug, and he came back with Mark and Craig, and they decided they would take the casket and take it over to Doug's barn and put it there for safekeeping until we could figure out what to do with it.
Why?
Well, we didn't know what else to do with it. We found the casket, and finders keepers. So we didn't know any better as young boys.
I guess.
We took the casket and put it over at Doug's house and kind of hid it in the back of the barn until we could figure out what to do with it.
Yes.
Many years have gone by. The casket's been used for haunted houses. It's been used for spook alleys every Halloween, but nobody really knows the true story of what happened and how it came to be. And one year, the Emerson School was doing a haunted house, and they had wanted to use the casket for their haunted house. And somehow I had gotten volunteered to have to lay in it dressed as a vampire. And I could only take about an hour because it just creeped me out, just being in that casket. So whatever happened. But through all these years, there's always been 3 questions in my mind, Art, that what could it have been? Was it damnation, resurrection, or just grave robbers?
God, I don't know. But that's one hell of a story. Thank you very much. A burned out casket. Finders keepers. as it relates to caskets, can you imagine? Still all warm. As if, I don't know, it sprang from the dirt or something, all by itself, and the occupant gone. Nothing but heat left. Finders keepers. God, only kids, huh? Hi, you're on the air, Ghost to Ghost 05. Welcome.
Are you talking to me, Art?
I am talking to you, sir.
Okay.
What is your first name and where are you?
Well, it's Ivy, and I'm Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, Ivy, what's up?
Okay. Well, you asked for somebody to send you email on ghost stories. I've had several ghostly experiences.
All right, well, we only have time for the scariest of them all.
All right. Well, we were living with my in-laws at the time. I was married, and I was working the night shift, and it was my night off. Everybody else upstairs sleeping, and I was sitting in a semi-darkened living room, lit only by a street light outside, meditating on nothing in particular. Suddenly, there was a presence in the room by the TV. Nearly everyone's had the experience of sitting in a crowded auditorium and felt someone staring at the back of their head.
Sure,
around, looked at that one person. That's how I sense entities. Anyhow, I've had several such experiences, but this one was very strong. I also sensed basic emotions such as anger, fear, confusion, and so on, and I was sensing great fear. I saw nothing but the inside of the room. I said something like, "It's okay, go outside and someone will be there to meet you." In just an instant, whatever or whoever it was beside my chair and gave me a hug that almost knocked the wind out of me.
A hug?
There was no physical feeling to this, but it was definitely a powerful hug. And then in an instant, it was gone. I spent the rest of the night wondering exactly what had happened. The next day, while I was sleeping, my mother-in-law called Uncle Harold, her 90-year-old brother-in-law who lived across town, to see how he was doing. There was no answer, so she took a key to his house and went over to check on him. When she got there, she could see him sitting in his easy chair, but there was no response to her knock, so she let herself in. The best guess was that he had died at the exact time that I had received my visitation the night before. It was after I got up and told them of my experience the previous night, and they informed me of Uncle Harold's demise. That led to some interesting conversations.
God, I bet. No doubt in your mind about where that hug came from, right?
Pardon me?
No doubt in your mind about where that hug came from.
Oh, I have no doubt at all. Uncle Harold and I were very, very close, and he had willed his house to my mother-in-law, and since we didn't have a home at the time, we moved into there. It was just full of his little inventions. He was quite the inventor. And when I got a novice ham license, I was privileged to use the same antenna that he had used to contact Admiral Perry on at least one of his polar expeditions.
Well, it's thank you very much for the call. It's always wonderful to move into a house where, if you're a ham radio operator, where there's already an antenna. But in this case, a hug, huh? Yes, already indications of a sort of an early theme that the dead want to come back at least long enough to let somebody know that they're all right, or in some way give them an indication. I believe I had such when my father passed. Is it that? Or is it that you're looking for something? Well, I can tell you honestly, I certainly wasn't. In the case of my dad, it was a little bat that landed on our porch on the morning of his passing. It was so unusual, it stayed the day and it just left, and it was fine, but this bat just flew virtually right down to my feet on the front porch, and it was bizarre. Anyway, I think that those who pass do try to let those who remain know in some way, sometimes very graphically, that they're still there. Good morning. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM, Ghost to Ghost AM with Art Bell.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
Hi, this is Mike from Vancouver, Washington.
Good morning, Mike.
Hey, I wanted to tell you a story about when I was around 11 years old. I went to a church camp. I loved this church camp. It was Sky Lake. It was in the Windsor, Damascus area of New York.
Yes, sir.
And, well, it's kind of like are you familiar with like the Friday the 13th movies? You know how the kids are with their campers, with the...
Of course.
You have the boy group and the girl group. Well, we all went out in a field and did a stargaze. It was about 30, 40 of us. And, well, I got woke up in the morning, early morning, about 4 o'clock, 4:15. It was where the sky was just starting to turn light, and it's still dark. And, I thought, well, I might as well, everyone's dead asleep. The fog is rolling in. It's kind of damp. And I thought, well, I might as well go to the restroom area and take a shower. That way I can get done, and that way there's before the lines and stuff. So I went over, and there's this shower area with a bathroom area, like 8 stalls in the boys' room, and it's located next to this forest line, about a football field away from where the group was.
Yes.
So I went over and walked into the bathroom, and got my stuff, and I sensed something like a presence, and I just kind of dismissed it because I didn't know. I was only 11 years old. I wasn't really thinking about anything bad or anything. And then I heard like a giggle, like a little kid, and I start looking underneath the stalls, and there's nobody there. And I look out the window. I could jump up and look out the window, and everyone's asleep. And so the giggle stopped, and so I proceeded to take a shower, and I sudsed my hair, and then all of a sudden I heard these children laughing, and it started to scare me.
Children. Again, children. Good morning, everybody. It's your program, and therefore directly to the lines we go. First-time caller line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Hello, Art.
Hello, sir.
Hi. Yeah.
What is your first name, and where are you?
Okay, my name is Michael, and I'm from Vancouver, Washington, and I was in the middle of telling you about my story. I was in the shower, and I heard these children
Laughing.
start to laugh.
Yes.
And what was weird about it is they waited until I had my head soaked.
Your most
shampoo,
vulnerable moment. I know exactly what you're saying. You got suds all over you, and now it gets loud, and there's lots of kids. Great.
And the thing was, it was like it fed on my fear because my heart started racing, and the more scared I got, the louder it got. And so the only way to deal with it was I started singing. And as soon as I got washed off, man, I was out of there. I ran. It was just quite a
You are the
experience.
first person who has ever dealt with something like this that I've talked to by singing. What did you sing?
I was just singing some praise tunes that we normally did at church camp.
I've got it. All right. Well, thank you very much. So there you have it. Saved by the song, I guess. It's bothersome to me, and I know to the EVP people that so many of these stories seem to involve the very young, the children. Somehow we just don't want to think that they would have to endure some sort of eternity here on Earth after passing, but actually, it should be said, a disproportionate number of EVPs, and these stories that we're hearing tonight involve young children. The universe just can't be that cruel, can it? Wildcard line, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Art. How are you?
I'm quite well, thank you. What is your first name and where are you?
My name is Peggy, and I'm in Rochester, New York.
All right, Peggy.
Well, I've got a real exciting and some tragic information here.
Okay.
In 1977, my ex-husband's wife shot and killed her 2 children.
Oh, my God.
And then killed herself. He and I were the data processing department for a major mail order company in Tucson.
Yes.
And I had known his wife and children because I'd bring my children and my date to play cards with them. And we would just, for hours sit there and have fun. My children would play with his while we played cards.
Yes.
About a year after the tragedy, through sympathizing with him and because I worked with him, I fell in love with him.
Mm.
We married about a year later, and since his home was larger than mine, me and my children moved into his home.
Sure.
Subsequently, we had 2 burglaries and then had a burglar alarm installed. He was traveling to Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca on a weekly basis with his job for the city there, and he'd be gone about 5 days a week, and this went on for months. After we put the burglar alarm on, he was gone, and each night he was gone at exactly 2 a.m.,
It would
no
go.
later. Our burglar alarm would go off. When responding, the police couldn't find any entry. Even the burglar alarm company had reviewed the system many, many times.
Right.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Arizona. You can have your window open because of your swamp cooler,
Right.
about 1.5 inches, 2 inches max,
Right.
and still have your system operational.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, both the police and the alarm company would have it set so that the window was open and try to set that alarm off. It would not go off for them. Now, mind you, while this was going on, each time the alarm went off, I had trained my children to immediately run to my room, lay down next to the bed, and I had a .357 Magnum underneath my pillow that I would point toward the hallway, the bedroom door.
A .357 Magnum.
A .357 Magnum.
Okay.
And I didn't even know how to shoot a gun.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, I was so terrified after, this happened, I would say 20, 30 times.
Oh, God. Is it your presumption that these children and this woman who had killed them and then committed suicide was coming back to the house? I mean, is that where we're going here?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because I would hear, when my children were at school, I would hear children's whispering coming from the kids' rooms.
Right.
And I would find things like the flour would be in the refrigerator, the milk would be in the pantry. I would put things down, and I'd turn around to get them, and they weren't there, and I'd go crazy looking for them. I think this was the kids kind of playing with.
Yeah, I've got it. These shows end up scaring me every damn time. This is really doing it for me. Already I see this theme, and here you are again with children, and what a tragedy. Well, did it ever all end, or is this something that's just going on and on?
After months and months of this, and the police responding, one of the policemen pulled me aside. And he said, "Lady, if I were you, I would not spend another night in this house."
Really?
Because he had responded on numerous occasions with this situation. Well, I told my husband, I said, "Look, it's either me or the house." We bought a home the next day and moved out. The entire 3 years that we were there, it would be 110 degrees in the middle of summer, and my living room, I get goosebumps and the hair raises on my arms.
So you were driven from the house?
Yes, I was driven from the house. That house would be like an ice box in the middle of summer. Just the one room. And I could always...
this is something you must have talked over with your husband.
Yes.
Many times. And so
yes.
By the end of this, you were both absolutely convinced what was going on. Do you think that these spirits stayed with the home when you moved? It all stopped?
No, it did not stop. As a matter of fact, 6 months after we moved out, the new owner telephoned us very late at night, and I would guess around midnight. And he asked my husband if he was the original owner of the home. And we knew exactly why he was asking.
Yeah. I've heard that when you go to sell a house with the kind of activity that you had, you're actually legally, responsible to tell the person, maybe in California or just some states, I'm not sure, that it is a haunted house.
I don't believe we were at that time.
That may well be, yeah. Yeah, I think you have to now. In some places, anyway, you actually have to tell them it's haunted. That's how serious this is. So is it all resolved now, or what?
No, I don't think it's resolved. Something happened subsequent to that. Did you get my email earlier?
I got your email.
Okay. Subsequent to that, in 1985, my daughter ran away from home. And she called me about 2 weeks later and proceeded to tell me that my ex-husband had been molesting her.
Oh, God. It just gets worse and worse and worse.
It was right then and there that all of a sudden it hit me. There was no motive until that moment for this murder-suicide.
Oh,
and
wow.
my feeling is that she was trying to get me out of that house.
Clearly.
Me and my children away from him. I believe she killed her children because she could not leave them with him.
Oh, that's incredible.
And she could not herself deal with the situation emotionally.
Well,
So I believe that this man has blood on his hands. And I could not get the police department to listen to me on it.
well, you sure got one to tell you to get the hell out, though. Thank you very, very much for the story. So many of these hauntings seem to have some kind of tragedy, instant, some horrible accident or suicide associated with them. Could it be, of course, we frequently speculate that souls are held here on Earth or in some kind of purgatory when it's something like what was just described. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been listening, and we've had quite a few incidents happen, and there was one that just happened recently, and it really sort of worried me, but we'd gone through the hurricane, and I had been up all night, going through
hold on. What is your first name?
Sharon.
Sharon, and where are you?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville, Florida. So you'd been through a hurricane.
Yeah. And so I had laid down finally that morning, to get some sleep. And so I woke up, and my bedroom door was shut. And all of a sudden I look, and it's like I had some clothes hanging on the back of it, and somebody was pulling the dress away from the door like they were looking at it. This is what was really strange.
Huh.
And so anyway, later I went into the washroom. I was going to decide to do some clothes, and so do some wash. And so I opened the washer, and there inside the washer was 3 stems of leatherleaf fern inside my washing machine.
Really?
And I'm saying, oh, my God. Then I knew what had happened. My mother was a real dress nut. She used to make us dresses all the time when we were young.
Yes.
And so she was a fernery. She had started the leatherleaf fern business. And so anyway, I have her fern here.
Huh.
And so I think is what she was trying to let me know, that it was her that was here with me during the storm. You know what I'm saying?
I've got it. Yes.
And then another incident, my husband had gone up on the roof after a hurricane one year. And so when he was trying to come back off the roof, the ladder was there, but the ladder kept moving back and forth. And so he couldn't figure out what was making the ladder move. And so anyway, he starts to come down, and he falls backwards. And he hits the tree, then comes down the concrete and hits his head, cracks his whole head open. And anyway, we end up getting him a rescue. He dies on the way to the hospital.
Oh, my God.
He's dead for about an hour. He comes back, and anyway, we find out later this girl had come to the house to visit, and she brought a friend of hers with her, and she happened to be from the Cherokee tribe. Anyway, she was psychic. And she said, there's somebody in this house. There's a spirit in this house. And so she goes to start to me, said, there was an accident not too long ago. And I said, yeah. She said,
wait a minute, slow up. You don't die for an hour.
He was dead for an hour, and he came back. He was sent back.
No, you don't.
Yeah, he was. They verified. I mean, I heard on the radio if they were lifting off with the helicopter. I was in the office there in Mercy, and if
are you saying that he was declared dead?
Yeah, he was declared. Yeah, they said patient just died, and so I went back later, and they said he was dead for right at an hour on the way to the hospital, all the way from where we were at to they had to go to another place because it was storming. They had to go to another place.
Well, that alone is just absolutely astounding.
Well, I know it's happened to a lot of people I know, but anyway. Anyway, she was telling me, she said, well, I'm going to tell you who this was or why this accident happened. And she starts to describe this young man, and then she tells us that It was my brother-in-law. He was trying to warn my husband not to get on the ladder because my husband didn't notice he'd put the wrong end of the ladder down. He had the rounded end instead of the flat end.
Oh.
And he was trying to warn him not to get on the ladder.
And that's why the ladder was shaking.
Yeah. And so anyway, he said Jim was trying to save his life. That's my brother-in-law.
Got it.
And so anyway, then she says, Paula, he's standing right behind you. We were sitting at the counter in the kitchen and the sink and all that's right behind me. And she said, Paul, and she never even knew, she described him to a T. He was standing there making himself coffee right behind me. And I went, oh my God. And so then another incident happened with my father-in-law. And my grandchildren were here, and one of them turns around and looks out the window and says, who's that old man walking across the yard to the shed? And so I went, oh, my God. So I showed her a picture. I said, is this him? She says, yeah, that was my father-in-law. And, I mean, we've had so many instances. Like my grandchild, he showed up after he passed away.
All right. Well, it seems to, thank you very much, run in the family then. Anybody out there watching the show Medium? It's kind of interesting, actually. I believe they ran 3 in a row this night. It's the story of Alison Dubois. Alison Dubois lives down in Phoenix. She's a real person. I'm trying to get an interview with her, by the way. I'm working on that, even if I have to do it during the day and tape it or something. God, I really want to interview Alison Dubois. But in the show Medium, she frequently has, what you just heard, encounters actually seeing a person who is dead in trying to resolve some kind of situation, ongoing tragic murder or something associated generally with crime, because she works for the district attorney. Anyway, it's a pretty good show. So if you haven't seen Medium, it's something you might want to check out. And I certainly would be interested in interviewing Mrs. Dubois. Can you imagine that? West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art. This is Debbie in Sutherland, Oregon.
Hello, Debbie. You're going to have to speak up and yell at us. You're not too loud. So
Okay,
get real
is this
close
better?
to... Oh, that's much better.
Okay, this is my shape-shifting. Could be ghostly, could be not. It's
Okay.
About 1 o'clock in the morning, I stepped out on the front porch to put some dry food out for the cat,
Right.
and evidently I scared some kind of a creature that was eating off the porch, and when I got out there and shut the door, it was down at the bottom of the stairs on the driveway. Now,
What kind of creature? I mean, how much of a description?
Well, it was small, round, didn't see any legs, couldn't see its face, it didn't turn around, it had long brown hair that hung to the ground, and it started to move, and it waddled as fast as it could, which wasn't very fast.
Waddled.
It really didn't have any legs. It was kind of waddling, and as it moved down the driveway, it started to grow, get taller, and the brown hair was gone. It became short hair, dark hair. The legs grew as it went down the driveway. It wasn't making a sound. And I thought, as it's going down, I'm thinking, raccoons? No. It gets to the end of the driveway, and it's tall like a deer, and I think deer. It runs across the street. It's not making a sound. It clears the sidewalk across the street with 1 foot. At that point, I heard a hoof print.
A hoof print.
A hoof print.
So we're talking about some kind of shape-shifting...
creature. It ran across the lawn, the front lawn of the people across the street. They also have a concrete patio right after the lawn. At that point, it made no noise as it went across this patio. At that point, I could see that it was growing long black hair, and it was running, and it was flowing out behind it.
Wow.
I watched it until it got all the way past all their lights. The street was well lit.
Just let me stop you long enough to ask, you actually could
saw
visually see the hair
Yes.
growing?
Yes. I saw everything from the bottom of my porch to the end of the driveway to the 1 hoof print on the sidewalk, cleared the lawn, made no noise. It was going across their patio, and it started to grow long hair, this black long hair that flowed out from behind it.
That's straight out of some kind of movie.
I don't know, and I watched it until it went into the darkness. I had my porch light on. We have a street light out in front of the house. People across the street have their porch light on, which was unusual for 1 in the morning. We live in a cul-de-sac. The street's not very wide. At the end of the cul-de-sac, a creek runs through there. The people at the end have a nice creek through their backyard.
A creek runs through it.
Yeah, so it ran into the darkness. A couple of days later, I went over to the lady that lives in the cul-de-sac, and I went in and I sat down and I told her all the thing, and she sat there and stared out the window for a moment, and she said, well, I guess things happen. And she thought for another moment and said that she sees all kinds of animals come up from the creek all the time.
Good morning. We're exploring with all of you real experiences people have had with, those who have passed for the most part. Not all of these stories may have been that. And you have to imagine that in addition to human spirits that for whatever reason may remain or remain in contact with some of us, there are perhaps spirits that have never been nor ever will be human. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, this is Keith. How you doing?
Hi, Keith. Where are you?
I am in Hastings, Minnesota.
Hastings, Minnesota. All right, welcome. You have a story, no doubt.
Yes, sir. It's from a book that I've written on my experiences as a person who's been sensitive to those sorts of things over the years. And it's called The Mineral Springs Sanitarium. This is a true story. And the Mineral Springs Sanitarium was a tuberculosis center.
Yes.
Built in the early 1900s down in Cannon Falls, Minnesota. That's kind of way out in the sticks. Well, anyway, when we were back in high school, me and some friends decided to go down there. And we didn't know where it was, but it turned out that a friend of the family had a mom who worked there, and she told us where it was because it was abandoned. So we went up there to shoot a music video. We just kept on getting this weird feeling. And you can imagine it's just like a standard hospital. You know, it's 4 floors, an elevator on one end, and a staircase on the other end. And we went in the place, and there were still beds in the rooms and files in the filing cabinets. And even stuffed toys left in the nursery. The whole place had just been like it was just abandoned.
Right. You're not very loud. You're going to have to yell at us here a little bit.
Oh, sorry, sir.
Okay, continue.
So anyway, what we did was we decided to go back the next night and explore, and see what it was like at night. And so we went there, me and a friend of mine, and we took some baseball bats with us because there were rumors of like satanic cults and stuff down there. Of course, it's urban legend stuff. And anyway, we went down there, and we decided to start at one end of the building, and she took one side of the hallway, and I took the other side, and we go in the room with the flashlights and the baseball bat and see if anybody was in there. And if nobody was in there, we'd shut the door behind us and leave. Well, we did this for like the first floor, the second floor, and finally we got up to the third floor of the facility, and we were about halfway down the hall. And all of a sudden, I come out of this room, and I shut the door, and nobody's there. And we're going on to the next door, and all of a sudden, bam, one of the doors slams behind me, and I turn around, and she looks at me, and it happened to be the room that I just come out of. Well, we're trying to explain it off. I might have missed somebody, or maybe it was the wind because there was some broken windows. So I go back to the door, and the handle's still jiggling. And that's when I realized that the door opens in, not out, and I had shut the door behind me. So I open the door and look into the room, and it was a room that didn't have a closet or anything in it, and the glass was still in the window of this room. And she looks at me and goes, we should get out of here. So I'm like, okay, I'm with that. So we turn around and we start heading down towards the stairwell, which was maybe about 50 feet away, and we made it about halfway there, and all the doors on that floor started opening and slamming as hard as as hard as you could open and slam a door physically.
Yes.
That's how hard these doors were slamming.
Oh, all by themselves.
Yep.
So you no doubt readied your baseball bat to combat this force.
No, we got the heck out. We ran like crazy.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I did too.
The car was maybe about 50, 60 yards from the building, and we got there, and I'm fumbling through my keys. It's like a horror movie. And I'm like, stop. I got to get in the car, got to calm down. And we sat there by the car, and we could still hear all the doors in the building opening and slamming by themselves.
That'd do it for me.
Yeah, no doubt. But here's the really weird thing, Art. There was a contractor who bought this property, and the city of Cannon Falls was blockading him because he wanted to put in like condominiums down there.
Yes.
And one night the building mysteriously burns down, so then he can go ahead and forward with his work. Now they're building houses on that. And there used to be an unmarked cemetery where they put the unclaimed bodies of the tuberculosis patients down there.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I very much appreciate the call. Then obviously, that was, I don't know, I guess you'd describe that as poltergeist activity. That a spirit can move things, that I think it takes additional power because you don't hear of it frequently. We do get these stories, but not frequently. of things actually moving, flying around a room, of spirits being able to manipulate material things. But it's very unusual. It's certainly not usual. It's the odd ghost story. You're on the air, Ghost to Ghost AM with Art Bell. Good morning.
Art.
Hi.
This is Jim in St. Louis, Missouri.
Hey, Jim.
Hi. This happened years ago when I was living in Colorado Springs in the mid-'80s. My girlfriend and I were out for a drive one night on a dark mountain road up in the mountains above town and parked at a place where we could overlook the city lights below. But we were sitting on the car facing away from the city lights and looking down into the darkness of the road as it headed back into the mountains.
Uh-huh.
And suddenly, two shadowy figures emerged from the blackness and were coming silently toward us. And each black, featureless figure appeared as a head and a torso, but the lower form was indiscernible and appeared to just fade into nothingness.
You mean like no legs?
Yeah. I couldn't even say there were no legs. It just kind of like
Nothing.
kind of faded out,
Yeah, were these things, how would you describe them, as floating?
Absolutely. I was just going to say they were floating straight towards us, and they weren't weaving side to side or bobbing up and down or jostling in any way that you might associate with normal walking. And
smoothly floating is very bad.
Yeah.
I mean, living humans, as you say, when you move, you jostle, you walk, you move back and forth, you don't float evenly. That's horrible to begin with. Okay, so then
doesn't
what?
make me nervous.
Yeah.
We first laid sight upon them, they appeared to be about 75 yards away from us and coming straight towards us, floating straight towards us.
Uh-huh.
And I just casually said, "Here come a couple people."
Yeah.
And about 3 seconds later, they appeared to be only about 50 yards away. And I said, "And they're coming pretty fast." And then about 2 or 3 seconds later, they appeared about only 25 yards away, and I shouted, "Get in the car!" And we scrambled into the car, nervous wrecks, and I'm shaking my keys so bad I could barely get the car started. And finally I get it started, and I gun the car, peel out, just as my girlfriend, who's looking out the back window, screams, "Jimmy, go!" And we got out of there and drove home. We were scared out of our minds, and we took a lot of time to quiet down, and I began to ask her to tell me her version of this story. I didn't tell her anything that I saw. I just wanted to see what she would tell me.
Yes.
See how well they match.
Uh-huh.
And they matched virtually perfectly in every detail, but she did add that as I was peeling out, and she was looking over her shoulder out the rear window, these two ghostly figures had closed the remaining distance and were nearly upon us.
Oh, my God.
And then we were gone.
Yeah, and she would have, of course, been the only one to have seen that, looking back, telling you to get the hell out of there. Yeah, I've got it.
Right. And you would think by that close, something more detail would have come into view, but she didn't mention that any did, or that they diverted off the path.
Well, there's probably a silly question for you because you have no way of knowing, but had you not made it the hell out of there, what do you think might have happened?
I've wondered that all these years, and I have no idea what would have happened if it just would have gone poof and it was gone, or what turned out to be people, but I've had doubts as to whether it's people like riding bicycles or something, because even then you would still see some wavering of some kind, or maybe hear the bikes. Plus,
well, a rational human brain tries to make sense out of something that makes no sense at all, like floating parts of bodies. Very bad.
I never could imagine anybody taking that kind of chance coming upon us, because, for all they know, we could pull out guns and blast them down, So it just kind of casts a little more doubt on the likelihood of just being a couple casual strollers,
Well, I'm glad you're here to be telling us the story, and probably you're only here because you took off. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Take care. Parts of human bodies floating evenly, no jostle, no movement, just moving toward you very, very quickly. That would do it, and I would do exactly what he did. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Hello, Art.
Hello there. What is your first name?
It's Keela.
Keela.
Keela. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Keela, where are you?
Well, I'm in Tennessee, a place called Wartburg.
Tennessee.
Yeah,
All
next to Oak Ridge.
Well, welcome to the program, Keela. Do you have a story for us?
I do, and it kind of spans quite a long time because I'm getting up there in age. And it started back when I was young. The house that we lived in wasn't very old, and it had an upstairs to it. It had 13 steps to the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was young, when I was little, I slept, of course, downstairs close to my mother. But then as I got older and as the brothers and sisters grew out of the home, I finally got my own upstairs room.
Boy, there's nothing like that, huh? If you've got brothers and sisters to finally get your own room, that's hot stuff.
Especially out of 6 other brothers and sisters.
That's right. That's like winning the lottery.
That was it. Well, anyway, everybody that would come over, cousins and friends and, just whoever, they would go upstairs and, you get hungry and I'd run down and get something. All of them. All of my nieces, all of my nephews, all of my cousins and friends hated going upstairs. They didn't want to go up there. They kept telling me things would happen to them. Well, nothing ever happened to me. So it didn't bother me. I wasn't afraid of any. So I'd laugh because it would keep everybody out of my room. I didn't have to hide my stuff.
Right. All right.
So I just jokingly to myself, would say, thanks, Joe, especially if somebody come over that I didn't want to come up to my room,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't think anything about it. Well, I went to visit my cousin in her new house after she'd had her baby. And because me and my cousin were real close. Well, we still are. But anyway, I was rocking her baby in the living room. And my cousin, you have to understand, from upstairs, she was skittish anyway. I called her Shaky Jake because anything scared her.
Uh-huh.
And we were in the living room, and I was rocking the baby, and we kept hearing these noises. And they were coming from down the hall where the nursery was at, but the baby didn't sleep in the nursery. And so she wasn't going to go investigate by herself, so I had to go with her holding the baby.
Right.
We go in and open up the door, and in the middle of the room is this big bird, way back when they had Big Bird that would talk, and I'm sure they still have them, and a Teddy Ruxpin that would tell stories. Okay, well, they were carrying on. It was like they were talking to one another. And so me and her start laughing. It's like, oh, you've left the toys on. You're scared for nothing.
Huh?
We go into the room to turn them off, and it's at that point that we realize they're not on. Their little thing is on off. And to top that off, it has no batteries in it.
Uh-huh. Oh, my God. And these toys have animated and are in some sort of dialogue with each other.
That's what, yeah.
No batteries, no on switch, nothing, huh?
Right. Okay. I'm not a scaredy cat, Art. And maybe I should be, but I'm not. It really, I kept thinking, it's something to do. It's a new toy. They've, some kind of manufacturing thing.
Yeah.
My poor cousin, it was not very long that she moved out of that house.
Well, I'm with your cousin, perhaps because I understand how impossible that is. Anyway, she took off, huh?
Well, after she had moved, and I guess it was a year or two later, I went back up to visit her at her new house now. And we were laughing, cutting up, talking about how everybody hated my upstairs bedroom. And how she kept saying that's haunted, and she never did go back upstairs. I was laughing about that because here she was a mother now, and she still wouldn't go upstairs in that house that I used to live in, my home.
Well, I thank you. I don't blame her. Animated toys without batteries, no, that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, then something is just too weird. Remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind? You remember when the ship was nearby with a large electromagnetic field of some sort, insanely large, and lights were going on and toys were beginning to operate, that kind of thing? Yeah, electromagnetics. Hello there. You're on the air. Ghost to Ghost version '05.
Great. How you doing, Mr. Bell?
Very well, sir. Where are you?
I'm actually, my name is Eric. I'm calling from Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah.
No kidding. All right.
And this actually happened when I was living in Southern California. I was run-a-copping at a hospital, and I'd been there maybe about 6 weeks. And one of the floors that we had, it was an earthquake retrofitted, so it was an abandoned floor. So one night I got off the elevator and looked at the first patient room to my left, and we'd looked for transients and things like that, make sure everything's okay. The bathroom lights on in there, and that wasn't a problem. Plumbing still worked, electricity worked. So I walked in there, I flicked off the light, and I started checking all the rooms, subsequently down the floor. And I get around the other side, and I hear two voices. It sounded like maybe a male and a female just talking. And I'm thinking it might be our environmental services people. So I'm like, let me go say hello. So I backtrack and go back around, and there's nobody there, but that light's on now. I'm like, that's sort of strange. So I go back in, I turn off the light, and I start checking it again. I get back to the same spot where I was at, and I hear the two voices again. Just sounded like just a male and a female just talking, and I couldn't make out what they were saying, though. So instead of going back the way I came, I went up and around to the nurse's station. And again, it was, hospital floor. It's almost a circle type, deal. So, and there's nobody there. And at that time, I started to get this feeling that, there's something up there. And so, but I have to do my job, so I finish it out. And later on, I was talking to one of my partners, and he told me that when he was in training, he was up there, and he had got done checking all the rooms also, and he had walked over the elevator, and he hit the call button for the elevator, and he saw something flash out of the corner of his eye, and he looked over, and the last room he had checked, the call waiting light was going off now. And the only way to get that to go off is if you have to be inside the room pressing a button.
That's right.
And so I asked him, I said, well, did you go back and investigate? And he said, heck no, I started hitting that call button to make that elevator come up quicker, and he got the heck out of Dodge. Not a real scary story, sir, but just sort of an odd one.
No, probably would have done it for me, thank you. But I guess I do scare a bit easily. Who was it? Tess Gerritsen, I believe. Tess Gerritsen, Dr. Gerritsen, who told us a story about how they used to put bells with ropes inside of coffins, so that if you were to awaken in your coffin, you'd be able to yank real hard, no doubt, on this cord, and let everybody know you're still alive, but you're trapped in your coffin. Most of you have good hearts. That's one good part of all this. So much of this is virtually heart-stopping that the majority of you calling who have been through these experiences, you've just got to have good hearts, right? Good, strong hearts, because here you are telling your story. East of the Rockies, your turn to tell your story. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, and what is your first name, and where art thou?
I'm Barbara, and I'm calling from Jonesboro, Arkansas.
All right, Barb.
When I was about 12 years old, my mom had started to drink. And if you know anything about alcoholism, if they don't want to get help, you watch them get progressively worse.
Until they hit bottom, that's right.
Yeah, so over the years, that's what happened until I was about 19. And at that point, I watched my mom get very bad and watched her change physically over the years. And she finally died an alcoholic. She just wouldn't get help.
I'm so sorry.
But one day, about 3 months after she died, I had gone back to the house where I was not living at home at the time. I went back to help my dad, and there were some dirty dishes in the sink, so I decided I would wash them up. And I was just kind of not thinking about anything, looking out the window at the backyard where I used to play. And I just felt like somebody had walked in the room and was standing next to me. And I looked over really quick, and there's my mother standing, but she looked at me, and I was so shocked. She looked, her face was all glowing, and her skin looked really healthy, and she looked healthy. Her hair was looked soft, and she said to me, "Don't worry about me. I am so happy now." And she was smiling. That's something I hadn't seen her done in years. And I don't know why I did this, but I kind of turned to the other direction, I guess for a reality check. And then I looked back, and as I was turning my head back, I wanted to say, "Mom,"
right?
And she was gone.
And she was gone. All right, here's what I want to ask you. And I'm sure you've asked yourself this many times. We hear so many stories like the one you just told, although usually not an appearance, and rarely does the person talk like this. But is there any possibility that your mind could have concocted this, in some sort of psychological calming for yourself, or no chance of that? This was real, huh?
Yeah, because I was just so shocked, and afterwards I was shaking because I thought, my goodness, it's just so bizarre. And I never told my dad because I just felt he wouldn't believe me. But, because of this whole thing with alcoholism, my mom and I didn't have a very good relationship anyway.
Right.
And her coming to me and smiling and just saying, "Don't worry, I'm okay," was just weird. I mean, it was just out of character, I guess you'd say.
Well, there are many who believe that on the other side, if we make it, to the supposed good place, you are restored to your best health and all the rest of that sort of thing. And so maybe it's all true.
I know, but she was glowing. I mean, she just had this glowing appearance.
Very healthy. The exact opposite of what she was in life. That's, I hope that's true. And for you, is it now true? I mean, was it so real that you have no doubt at all in your mind about kind of the nature of the other side now?
Oh, I wish that were true, but I still question myself.
You still have questions, huh?
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't know. I guess everybody goes through a period where they kind of question, if they had faith, they kind of question it. And then maybe that's where I'm at now. But I remembered this story as I was listening to your show, and I thought, oh my gosh, yeah. I remember that.
Well, thank you very much for calling, and that was an important question for me. I mean, the question about could, and she responded so quickly, no. Could it have been some sort of psychological protection, of your own mind reaching out and telling you what you essentially want to hear? But she came back very quickly, no. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Hello, Art.
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Murray in Portland.
I'm sorry, the first name again? Murray?
Murray.
Murray, okay. Welcome, Murray.
Thank you, sir. I'm a long-time listener. I started listening to you in, 1991 or 1992.
It's been a while.
A long ride. Well, the reason I'm calling is I had quite a ghost experience in 1988, and it's changed my life forever. And it's funny, when I found your show, I found that I wasn't the only guy out there that experienced this type of stuff. That was great.
Well, that is one thing about this program, of course, that people do hear other people, and then they say to themselves, I guess I'm not nuts.
Well, my wife still thinks I am.
How so? All right, so what happened?
Well, I was going to school in Fulton, Missouri, a place called Westminster College, and TV ended there. We were, pretty bad shape at that time. Couldn't afford cable, so TV shuts off pretty early, and you have to find something else to do.
Right.
We had turned on. I was with my cousin Mark and my friend Peter, and TV had ended. Yet we hadn't turned the TV off. We were just doing other things. By that time, a stereo had come on.
I was going to ask, is that back to the days when TV stations would sign off, play the Star-Spangled Banner, and go off the air?
That's right. I believe the last show was Star Trek, and then they They would do that, and that was out of Jeff City, Missouri. It was the only TV you could get.
Okay, so I remember all that, yes.
Yeah, those old days. So white noise had come on to the little television. It was probably a 14-inch TV.
That's right.
And my friend Peter was just noticed out of the corner of his eye, you could see images running in the snow. And it looked like, a feed from another station. And it was quiet. It was odd. It was very odd. And 5 minutes of this or something. And then it just passed. And we turned the TV off, listening to a record.
Right.
And this is where all reality ended. And I had the weirdest experience of my life. We're just sitting there in his living room of my cousin's house, and then we just hear a large groan come out of the kitchen.
A groan.
A groan. And it definitely caught our attention. We were like, what was that?
Human or animal type groan?
Human, definitely. From behind the corner, which would have been out of the kitchen, steps a lady. It looks like she's made of black smoke. You could see right through her. You could see the wall, the door behind her. And where she stopped in front of me, I could see a speaker behind her.
This is the moment you know your heart's okay, by the way.
It was definitely strange. I looked at my cousin. He looked at me. We're like, what is going on? And she's looking at us, and we're looking at her. And it got really strange from there. I don't understand when she disappeared. But the next thing we saw in front of us were three little boys playing jacks at our feet on the hardwood floors of the apartment.
Here we go again.
Little boys playing jacks, and you could, same thing, see right through them. They were made of black smoke, like when you burn plastic. I don't know, when I was a teenager growing up in Missouri, like on 4th of July, you'd see plastic burning. It was this acrid black smoke, and it was just angry. It was just strange.
God. That'd be, and more?
Oh, it just keeps going, sir. And I'll try to hurry, because I know we have a few listeners out there. I just think we mentally, all three of us kind of lost it so much when we saw these little boys playing. And two were skinny and one was heavier. And that was even funny. We all remember the same thing today. Somehow, that made a segue. I just cannot explain it. And that's the weirdest thing of the whole story is that suddenly there was a little girl. It reminded my mother, like Shirley Temple growing up. It reminded me of Shirley Temple. And she was doing cartwheels in place at the exact same place where we saw the older lady ghost and the boys playing.
And again, black smoke?
Just see right through it. Now, I've heard that term shadow people for all these years on your program, and I just don't know if that applies. I just don't even...
Well, I was almost going to jump to that myself. Anyway, did this all end, or how did it...
No. Did I mention that they were wearing period clothes? It was evident to us that they were
you did not mention that.
I'm so sorry. I'm a little excited.
When you say period clothes, what period?
Minimum turn of the century. It's not a PC thing, but the
You mean early, like 1900s?
Or earlier. This is Fulton, Missouri. They... Kingdom of Callaway, they seceded from the state and during the Civil War and stuff, so they've had a long history there.
Right.
Well, to cut to the point, we were watching this, observing this, and just couldn't believe it. And then there was just no image, I think, where it was with our thoughts. It's very hard to explain. And then in kicks the front door, and an African-American guy, big old man, runs in very angry, and he's pointing and yelling into the kitchen area where that original apparition had walked out. And he's just angry. You can tell he's a very abusive man. It just scared us to death. Then he saw us. He turned at me. He looked me straight in the eye, and he just cut across the room straight at me. And he got to within 3 or 4 feet of me, stared me straight in the face.
And?
He proceeded, he pulled his hand back and tried to punch me 2 or 3 times repeatedly. My friends are screaming at me. They're sitting down a little bit lower on the couch. They're screaming, no. And he swings at me. And He didn't. He didn't make contact. He could not make contact. And he sat back about a foot, and I sat up in my chair, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and absolutely positively, right there, we just knew we were just worlds apart.
Boy, you're right about one thing. That's where reality ended, and then all of this whole thing began.
And I could just see it on his face, and I just don't remember much. I remember my friends were like whimpering.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we were just so in shock.
And you all remember it the same way now?
Exactly. One of my friends after this quit school. It changed our lives completely.
I'm sure it would. That's into a. How would you describe that? It's like you walked into because there were several of them. So a different world opened up in front of you, different creatures, different. Perhaps a different dimension. I really don't know how to describe what I just heard. That's really weird stuff. Several entities of some sort, just a whole collage of them. Maybe that's a bevy of them. You're on the air, Ghost to Ghost, AM05. Hi.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Art Bill. How you doing, man? I'm calling from San Antonio. This is John.
Yes, John.
We love you, man. You're awesome, dude.
Thank you. You have a story for us, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk. One time it was on Halloween. It was down here in San Antonio at the train tracks. And
the famous train tracks?
Famous train tracks. And we went out there one day with a couple of friends, and we're in the back of a big, very big pickup truck. It was a 4x4 off-road, very big. And there was 4 of us in the back of the truck. We went to the train tracks, and we did it one time. Went through it, and, we're messing around, goofing, laughing
All right,
about
you
it.
really ought to tell the audience, I suppose, a little bit of the background of the train track story in San Antonio.
Well, it's supposedly of a school bus that tried to go over, and I think it stalled.
The school bus stalled.
The school bus stalled, and supposedly they didn't get the kids out on time. The train came and took all of them.
Right. But now, subsequent to that, there have been so many stories about people who have intentionally parked their vehicles on the train tracks, some of them sprinkling powders and stuff, and these vehicles are pushed over these train tracks in San Antonio, and you can actually see little children's hand marks on the back of the vehicles.
Yeah, I tried the baby powder, but I never got anything from that. But what's amazing that this vehicle that we were in was very big, very humongous.
And what did it move?
Yeah, it moved. It moved it. And what was weird is that it goes it goes up on a hill a little bit. And the third time around, I was telling my friend to mess with the brakes. He kept messing with the brakes. I told him, when you get right to the slope and the truck's pointing kind of up at an angle, I said, step on the brakes. I said, and make it come to a complete stop. He did that, and then I told him to let it go because I wanted to see if he was going to push the big.
Boy, you were really testing this, weren't you?
They pushed over the truck, and it went sliding to a slope to the side. And there was 4 guys in the back. I had 4 friends in the back, and there was 3 people inside the truck. Girl in the middle, my friend Donald, Angel driving the truck, 4 of us in the back.
And you all witnessed?
Yeah, we had already did it about 3 times. And the third time, when we were doing it, we did that slope, and we heard a bunch of children crying. We could hear, I heard from 7 to 8 children
crying,
moaning and crying, and this was the best surround sound that you could have ever heard of children just crying. We freaked out, and everybody looked at each other. We told each other, did y'all hear that? And they said, yeah. And I asked them what they heard, and they said that they heard children crying. 2 guys in the back claimed that they heard a train coming. I didn't hear no train coming, but we all heard the children crying, man. And let me tell you, it scared us. I just started yelling to the guys.
Well, you should not have. All right, first of all, you should not have been testing that in that way. I've heard from enough people about this story that I guess I believe it's true. That these children that were killed now push vehicles off these train tracks. But to go and intentionally test it in the way you did, and to apply the brakes and to cause these entities to break out in tears, that's a little much. I don't think I'd be testing it in that way. That's really tempting some kind of fate, I think. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Hi.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning. Where are you, sir?
Mike in Traverse City, Michigan.
Hey, Mike.
How are you this morning?
Well, a little freaked out, but...
It is so good to hear you on the radio.
Thank you.
And our story comes kind of from the old country, from Ireland.
Okay, you're going to have to speak up good and loud for me.
Okay. My wife and I make a number of trips to Ireland. We've been there 3 of the last 4 years, and 4 times total. And we like to hunt out castles. And there are so many there that the people are so nice, you can usually knock on a door of a caretaker or the castle itself and get the guided tour or get permission.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd love to go castle hunting myself.
Oh, it's great. It's so ancient, and my wife kind of has that touch. Her grandmother's from Ireland, and they said she had the shining, so to speak.
Oh.
But there are some castles that you just can't get permission because nobody's around, and so you, hate to say it, you trespass. And you figure if you get caught, you apologize, and hopefully
really
just leave.
Okay.
But we went to Charleville, right pretty much smack in the center of Ireland. It's a Gothic castle built, I'd say, in the mid-1700s.
Yes, sir.
And reputedly one of the most haunted in Ireland. And again, literally sits right in the center of the island. We hit it on a Friday afternoon, and it's got one of those long winding roads that goes through oak groves and trees, and it's just the most ghoulish thing you could imagine.
Yes.
And we hit it, finally made that 1 mile drive up the driveway, and parked in the parking lot, and just a beautiful Gothic castle, very big. And went and knocked on the door, and of course nobody answered. And so we kind of just walked the perimeter, and we noticed a lot of sawhorses and construction material around, and we figured, like a lot of old castles, it was under renovation.
Yes.
So we kind of kept walking the perimeter, and then we heard a horn honk, and we thought, well, we're busted. We might as well, go admit and then leave. And came around, and there was a few more cars in the parking lot, and people that were dressed up in suits and tuxedos were going in the castle. So we asked one what was going on, and they basically ignored us. And we kind of followed them in and saw that they were taking wedding pictures.
All right, I believe we're back to the castle. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, Art. Very fitting bumper music, Year of the Cat.
Yes.
We were at our castle in Ireland, Charleville Castle, and we kind of split off from the wedding party. And immediately we headed up a long spiral staircase that was rickety and almost kind of like in that Julie Harris movie, The Haunting.
Mm-hmm.
And couldn't believe it got probably 2 or 3 floors up and did the thing you scream at movie characters for doing. I turn around and my wife's gone. She split off down the hallway.
Always.
And I told myself that, and it's like, this is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. So kind of rattled around and found her, came back down the stairs, and we saw stairs going down. So we proceeded, and we ended up in the dungeon. And all this time, from the time that we came in with the wedding party, this white cat was following us around and kind of rubbing against our legs, and we'd pick it up and pet it, and it'd purr, and it followed us up the stairs and in the grand hallway and then down into the dungeon. So we get down into the dungeon, and now we know we're really kind of in an area we shouldn't be. So our senses are really heightened because we're just sure we're going to get caught, and there's really not much apologizing you can do other than just face the consequences.
Not by the time you're in the dungeon.
Yep. There's no way out now. And so we're down there, and we start hearing the construction noises and the remodeling noises and saws, being placed down and sawhorses being moved around and tools dropped and people walking. So we're really trying to avoid that. And we hear it ahead of us, and so we go a little bit further, and then we kind of back up. And down in this dungeon in Charleville, it's a long, narrow hallway with alcoves shooting off to the left and to the right, like little black tunnels, which is kind of creepy as you're walking by them.
Sure.
And, excuse me, all of a sudden we hear the footfalls coming down the steps, and it's one of those kind of square spiral steps. So the boots are coming down the steps, and my wife leaps in a dark alcove and beckons me in, and I kind of hit that deer in the headlights thing and just froze. And the cat was on the bottom landing at the last turn, and the steps came down one at a time, distinctly hearing these steps, and all of a sudden the cat looked at me, looked up at the steps, and just hissed and arched her back, and then the noise stopped. And so we thought, boy, caught another break, and kept kind of walking around and hearing a lot of these noises, but could never find them. Well, as we came out finally and left the castle, we went out to our car and noticed that, we were the only car when we got here, and now we're the only car while we're here. And it's like 6 o'clock on a Friday night. We know that these good Irish folks aren't working construction after 5 o'clock on a Friday night, so what were those noises coming from?
Huh.
And never really did figure it out. Now, this last year, 2005, in fact, in September, we went back for a trip, and we met the owner of the castle. wonderful lady. She's an American, been there, I think, 15 years now. And she gave us the guided tour of the castle, which is just steeped in history and Masonic history. And
okay, we've only got a very short time now.
Okay, and as we were chatting with her, we told her about our last trip and apologized, and she accepted the apology. And then as we were talking about where's the white cat at, she looked at us and said, what cat? And we described it, and she asked a few more nuances, and we described the cat further. She said, that cat has been dead since 2001. That was her kitten. And we were kind of aghast at that point. Now, a year later, we've taken our digital photos and look at it, and you can see two apparitions of a cat and orbs floating everywhere.
Okay, thank you very much. I haven't made up my mind about orbs. On the other hand, they're unusual. I mean, most people into photography would say these are, lens flashes, and everybody knows that if you get the sun in a lens, you're going to see a whole bunch of different suns, and these are what they attribute orbs to. But on the other hand, orbs have been picked up in some photography where it really may be the spirit or a spirit or something like that, because there's absolutely nothing that would do that to the lens. So orbs, I don't know, they're kind of in my gray basket, but some of them are kind of eerie. You're on the air, Ghost to Ghost, AM05. Hi.
Art Bell?
Yes.
Hello, this is Juan from Pleasanton, Texas.
Yes.
To talk to you. I just wanted to say something about the year 2012.
Yes.
If you look in the Bible in verse 2012.
No, I don't generally allow verse reading.
On your own time, read it.
On my own time, okay.
It's kind of spooky. Also, you're a cat lover, right?
Oh, yes.
You ever seen a six-claw cat before?
As a matter of fact, yes.
You have?
I have. They're very unusual, but they do exist naturally. I mean, it happens like you get people with 6 fingers. It does happen. So there's nothing necessarily ghostly about that. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Hello. It's Michael calling you from Seattle. I'm actually a Portlander, and pleasure to talk to you again. I talked to you many years ago.
Good. I'm glad you're back.
Well, thank you. In 1977, actually, I had just rented a lovely little, cozy little duplex, half of a duplex in Portland's West Hills. And about the third night that I was there, just settling in, first I sensed this entity behind me as I walked I was going in and out of my little place, and it was evening. And I sensed first, and I figured, well, maybe I'm wrong about this. I sensed a very tall being, and I actually turned around and I addressed him, and it was a male. I knew somehow it was a male. And I greeted him and told him I was no harm. I would be no harm to him, and he was welcome in my home.
Do you mean sensed in the sense that somebody's in the room with you, or sensed?
Yes, I sensed that somebody had walked into the door, and he was right there in my little place. Well, I didn't think much of it after that, and I was doing some things, and finally I got ready for bed, and I went to sleep. And I swear to God, this story is true, and I swear on my my own father's memory. About somewhere around 2 a.m., give or take an hour, perhaps it was 2 a.m., and I was sound asleep. All of a sudden, the house had these beautiful little French windows that opened in. You had to open the window in to get air into the room.
Sure.
And this was February, and it was very cold, a particularly cold night. And all of a sudden, the pull shades on both at the same time just went up. And, when you pull on those old-fashioned shades and you let go, they go up really fast.
Yes.
And that's what happened. They each went up. It was almost simultaneous. It was kind of like bam, bam, like that.
Yes.
And that woke me right up.
That would do it.
Yeah, that'll do it all right. And then I watched each latch work. I watched the latches work, and I saw each of those windows, one at a time, opening into the room.
Oh.
And then, of course, and the wind was blowing, and these lace curtains that were on the windows, they were going.
By now, I'd be running.
I tell you, I did not sleep, obviously. I did not sleep the rest of that night. But I knew that it was taking its leave. It was exiting my life, and for some reason, I just knew that it didn't really either like me or relate to me or whatever.
Well, you still didn't get back to sleep, though.
Pardon?
You still didn't get back to sleep, though.
Oh, that's for sure. I was up the rest of that night. Yeah, the windows opened up. They just opened
all by themselves.
All by themselves. I watched the latch turn. I saw the windows opening, and afterwards I did talk to there were two gentlemen living there before me, and I said, you have a ghost, or you had a ghost, or I had a ghost anyway. And they said, oh, yes. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me? They said, because we thought, that would really scare you, and we just figured it would probably be okay one way or the other.
Uh-huh.
So that's my story.
And a good story it is. I appreciate the call, sir. Thank you. I wouldn't want to see anything move by itself. Not at all. And if you actually saw that, I think that, again, it would be a great way to know that your heart is in great condition. Especially, those, as he described, those old shades. You remember those? You let go of them, they go right up. But then the latches, you might make your way past that one, but the latches moving in the windows and going up by themselves, no. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, what is your first name?
My name is Donna, and I'm calling from Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Excellent.
And I listen to you on WHBY 1150 AM. And I had emailed you with, it was just 3 little stories about how I was raised in a haunted house. I will tell you the first incident, and it actually was the most frightening, even though I don't think you ever really get used to that kind of thing when it happens.
What happened?
Well, I was just a little girl, and I'm figuring now it was about 1959. I was raised in this house, and we kept this house until my father died in 1980. So I need to let you know that my father worked during the day. He was a painting contractor, and my mother worked second shift at the hospital, so she wouldn't get home until 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
And I'm about 7 years old. I'm getting ready for bed. I'm in my bedroom. My father's in the kitchen, and we've had finished dinner, and he's washing the dishes. And I can still remember my little fingers pushing these buttons of my pajamas through the buttonholes as I hear, Donna. And without even thinking, I just said, yes. And again, Donna. Well, then I thought it was somebody hiding under my bed. I'm a little girl. What do you think?
Yeah, about that. Maybe somebody's hiding under the bed.
In the bed. And not a monster, though. I just figured it was a kid, like my niece or something. But these thoughts are coming as quickly as what you could even think them. And so I think there's somebody under the bed, but I know there's no one there. And then I hear Donna. Now I look to my bedroom window because all the kids in our neighborhood, we all got together and played until the sun set, and things were different back then, what they are now. And we would talk to each other through the open windows at night if one could be out later than the other or whatever.
Are you sure I remember?
And I look to the window, but the window is shut. And I am wearing flannel pajamas. So now I start thinking, no, it's cold outside and there's no one there. And before I can even get that thought out of my head, this voice says to me, Donna, don't be afraid. I just want to talk to you. And with that, I became so afraid. I remember opening my mouth, but no sound came out. I tried to scream so hard, and no sound could come out. I was paralyzed with fear.
Well, sure. The moment something tells you don't be afraid, your reaction is going to be, I've got something to be afraid of.
Finally, when the voice came out, my father came running to me. And he comforted me, but he really didn't even know what to say. I know that he and my mother had talked about it after that. And then, of course, there were other incidences in that house. And as I grew older, then my father would start to talk to me about how he had experienced things just like that in this house. But the thing that, and I've tried to analyze this, and listening to your programs, I'm wondering now if what I experienced there in that room that night was maybe a sort of time travel, because I refused to sleep in that room ever again.
Certainly one of the things, thank you very much, that you can't rule out about these incidents. And that is that it is some sort of time travel, some sort of portal, some sort of accidental entry into some other realm. That certainly is a possibility, but then again, so many of these things seem to be personalized. You know, as in a relative coming back to let you know that they're okay, or even the children. But occasionally, these stories, you know, they don't make sense in terms of any contemporary reason for a contact. And so it could be some sort of slip, some sort of entry into some other realm or dimension, accidental or whatever. And that might account for some of these things. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Good morning.
All right.
Hi.
Hi, this is Linda calling from Houston, Texas.
Hey, Linda.
And my story, it has to do with what you were just talking about. This was back in 1957, and I grew up in a small town not too far from Roswell, New Mexico.
Right.
It was in Texas, and we would always vacation in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, which is kind of up in the mountains, and it looks down on the White Sands missile range. And I can remember we used to go and watch them fire off the Sidewinder missiles.
Oh, what a neat place, yeah.
It was really neat. And so we were up on vacation. I was with my friend, and I was about 12 years old at the time, and we were walking out in the piney woods, and we saw this cabin, and it had a window that was a little bit open on the bottom, and we didn't see any cars around. So being kids, we opened the window and crawled down into the basement, and we didn't hear anybody, and I was attracted to a piano, so I went over and lifted the piano bench, and I was looking at the music, and it had music like the Andrews Sisters from World War II, and it had like Glenn Miller Orchestra, and I thought, well, this is funny, all this music is from the 40s. So I went over into a closet, and there was like a leather sports jacket from the 40s and a prom dress. So I said, well, let's go upstairs. So we went upstairs and went into the living room, and on the coffee table were these papers, newspapers describing World War II. And I got to thinking, this is so strange. And I just looked around, and there was nothing from the 50s, no, rock music or Elvis music or any other papers. And
my God, so it is what we were talking about. It's kind of like you slipped into another time, sort of accidentally or somehow. Everything was from some other time.
But it was not like dusty. At first I thought, well, maybe the family had just left the vacation home and been killed or hurt in an accident and never returned, but everything looked shiny and new. And I went to the kitchen, and there was like a small light on in the stove and like coffee cups.
Yes.
And there was a medicine bottle, and I looked on it, and it was dated 1943.
Wow.
And the hair just stood up on my neck, and I bet. We've got to get out of here. I was just freaked out, so we crawled back out, and we were afraid to tell anybody because, we went into a house, we didn't take anything, but later on, looking back at it, it was like stepping into a different time.
I sometimes wonder, there are a lot of people in this world that just go missing. I mean, they're just never heard from again, no bodies ever found, they just go missing. There are many, many, many cases like that, and you've got to wonder if occasionally somebody like yourself has an experience like you had, except doesn't come back.
Well, in kind of analyzing this, looking back on it, my father was he was an Army airman, and he helped work on the timing device that dropped the atomic bomb.
No kidding.
And he was killed in August of 1945 before I was born. I was born in December of 1945. And I always wished that I could have met my father or known him or been around him. And looking back on it, I think maybe that was sort of a way for him to show me how things might have been had I been there when he was there.
Well, that might be a leap on your part, or not.
It took me a long time to kind of come to that conclusion, but I thought maybe I had gone back in time to try and see how things might have been back then.
Did you ever, well, you have no way of knowing. If you had embraced it and stayed, maybe you would have remained in that time, and you wouldn't be here talking to me right now.
That's what scared me the most. I had to get out of there because I could sense that really might happen.
Good morning. It is odd, isn't it, to listen to the average person tell these kinds of stories that otherwise would seem so unbelievable, but the lines are jammed. You could do this for days and days. You could do it for weeks on end. You could do a program that would be virtually nothing but ghost to ghost every single night of the week. Now, that means something. That means these experiences are widespread. It means that they're right across the population, right across all the demographics. Everybody, well, not everybody, but so many people have had one of these experiences. It's kind of like the number of people who have seen UFOs, that you have to, this much proof demands a verdict. That might be another way to put it, don't you think? First time caller line, you're on the air.
Are you talking to me, Art?
I am.
Wonderful.
What is your first name?
This is Pat, and I'm calling from San Antonio, Texas, listening on the Big Blowtorch, WOAI.
Boy, it is, too. What a signal. Welcome.
Yeah. This happened to me, true story, many years ago now. It's not a ghost story. I'd say it's more of some kind of demonic story, but here's how it goes. I was at my grandmother's house. My mom and her are cooking in the kitchen, making some kind of dinner, and they give me the scraps of the meal to take out to the dog. So I step out the door, go around to the dog. We had one of those big shepherd wolf dogs. Well, he starts growling at me. I played with this dog every day. Never, ever growled at me. A real gentle dog. But he's growling and barking, so I won't even go near him because he's acting real vicious. I put the food down, turn around, start to go back into the door. Something grabs my arm from behind.
Huh.
I turn around, and there's nothing there. My arm starts to burn, and there's something yanking on it. So I'm right in the doorway. I immediately grab the other side of the door and wrap my legs around it as this thing's trying to pull me, and I start screaming my lungs out. I mean, I can hardly breathe. Even when I think about this happening to me.
No, there you go. I mean, I always look for the right reaction from people, and if that happened to me, that's exactly what I'd be doing, screaming and squirming. And
that's it. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs.
Sure.
So by this time, I'm up at the top of the door because it's pulling me up. So I've got my head inside the door, and my other arm and my other leg, I've got both my legs wrapped around the door jamb, and this thing's pulling me, and my arm is burning.
Oh.
And my mom comes out out of the kitchen, and she looks at me, and she thinks I'm joking around or something because I'm up at the top of the door, and that's all she can see. And she goes to grab me and pull me off, and when she does that, we both get yanked out the doorway. And then she starts to realize that something's pulling on me, and what's happening?
Good Lord.
She wraps her arms around me, and she starts screaming, and my grandmother comes around. She thinks somebody's attacking us or something. So she comes running out of the kitchen with a big old butcher knife. I mean, the biggest knife she's got in the kitchen. It's practically a machete. And she comes out and sees what's happening. And by this time, we're going down the sidewalk. I mean, I'm up in
this
the
is
air.
like a giant tug of war, huh? And you're in the air?
Exactly. I'm up in the I'm up in the air. I'd say my mom's by now got me by the legs, just with her arms wrapped around like my waist. And
you swear to me this is true.
This is the God's truth. I have nightmares about this even when I think about it.
All right.
I mean, in my lifetime, this probably happened 20-something years ago, and I've had all kinds of freaky things happen to me since. I've seen.
I know, but getting yanked up in the air.
This happened.
And so, how in God's name did you get down?
Well, here comes my grandmother. She comes running out, and she's got this big old knife, and sees that there's nothing there, and I'm up in the air, and by this time, there's 3 big lines starting to appear on my arm. Look like long fingers.
Right.
They literally like something. I don't know, out of Alien. I've seen all kinds of movies, and it looks like just 3 long arms, or from my wrist to my elbow. I've got these 3 long, big red marks happening down my arm.
Right.
With another one going down the backside.
You said it was hot.
And it's burning it, and I can tell you, I can still feel it to this day. It was the most. If there's a word to feel demonic, I mean that's what I felt. It just felt like the most evilest, horriblest, just ill intent things
Got
at
it.
me.
And so how did you get down?
Well, she comes running out and she jumps in front and she starts swinging the knife everywhere. I mean, she's just trying to swing it out in the air and she's just attacking whatever it could be that's got me there. And she's making crosses and but my grandmother then, she was probably 60, 70 years old, and we knew her in the family as kind of a real religious woman, even though it might say a white witch or anything like that. And she was from Spain.
So she knew it was something invisible and evil, and she was after it. Got it.
And she started saying some words I couldn't even tell you to this day because I'm still busy. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. There's people coming out. I mean, there's witnesses. There was plenty of people that saw what was happening. That you really can't describe what you're seeing.
So you think she had the right words?
And she said some things and was waving the knife around, kind of making crosses with it and all this other stuff, and it let me go, and I fell to the sidewalk. And I've had nightmares about that over the years,
That is
the
a
rest
nightmare.
of my life. I mean, I've studied probably I've gotten to the point where when I do tell somebody about this, I ended by saying, that's what started my search for the third dimension, because I'm going to find this thing and kill it or kick its ass or something, but I know it exists. I know that there's something out there that...
Well, you're a braver man than I for trying to chase it down, whatever in the hell it is. I don't think I'd be chasing after something like that. Can you imagine actually being held in the air by something that had burned your arm? Brother. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this is Deborah. I'm up in the Gold Country in Northern California.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi. In 1988, I had been married about 8 years to a man. We lived in Hawaii, and he was just very charismatic. He just had a lot of confidence, and I just trusted and believed in him 100%. Anyway, this affair came out, and I was very upset. I broke up with him.
On his part?
Yeah, on his part, with like one of my best friends. And I was really upset, and I had gone to these like psychic fortune teller people. And while I was there, they said, your husband, he's going to try to kill himself. And I got really panicked, and I just ran back to the house as quick as I could. And it was just a little, tiny house with the screen door. And when I came in the screen door, he was sitting in his chair, and I sat down on the couch and I was talking to him. I said, "Are you going to try to kill yourself?" And he said, "Well, I just about did, but then, his friend had come over and taken the gun from him, and he'd written a suicide note and stuff." But he was so completely different. I mean,
now, was this after you had separated?
Yeah, we had had a fight, and I told him I was leaving, and I had been gone for the night. And then the next day I went to the fortune tellers.
Got it.
And so, but when I was talking to him, I said, I noticed that he didn't have like any energy. He was flat. I mean, I say he was like cardboard, like dry cardboard. It was so bizarre to see him like that. And he was just so dull. And I thought, this is the strangest thing about him. And in that instant, the screen door kind of like not blew open a lot, but just kind of shook open a little bit.
Are you sort of saying he wasn't there?
Yeah, and I found out later something. He explained something to me a little later, but yeah, it was like he really wasn't there anymore. And all of a sudden, the screen door shook, and he always would sit and watch TV, and the TV was on all the time. And anyway, the TV was on, but it was kind of turned down low, and all of a sudden, when the screen door shook, I could feel this force. It was like an electrical force that hit the TV set, and this was like in a small triangle of space, maybe about 15 feet. All of a sudden, the TV was like, going up and down where you couldn't see the picture, and it was all fuzzy and snowy. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to listen to him. He was talking so quietly. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, what is going on with the TV, right?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the TV stopped, shaking like that, the screen, and I felt something come in my body. And I was just like, whoa. I mean, my whole inside, almost as if I was choking from the inside, and it was like moving inside of me. I'm like, what is that? And I looked at him, I said, is that you? What the heck's going on, And then he just, scooted forward and said, give me your hands. And so he took both of my hands, and it was like some energy was running through my body. And it took, I guess, maybe about a minute, and then all of a sudden, I just felt exhausted. And he said, you know, I had closed myself off, you know, and I just opened myself up to you again, and because I guess he knew stuff I didn't really know. But then he was like he was back to normal. And
so you think he took energy, life energy from you?
Well, what I think happened is this is the thing that I finally got out of him. He was kind of a troubled youth, and he grew up in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon area. But one time he said he was walking in the woods as a young teenager, and this voice came to him and said, well, I will give you power if you want this power, and he accepted it. And I just think that he had allowed this dark power to kind of give him this confidence, because I found out later, I mean, so many big things he lied about. But but yeah, I think that the spirit left his body when he was thinking of killing himself.
Boy, that's
What I think happened, and then I think it actually was like in the tree outside the front door.
That is really odd. That's an odd one. All right. Thank you very much. Well, I actually can imagine that in an instant or instance before somebody would decide to commit suicide, they've already given up life, right? If they're really serious about it, then they have given up life. And it may well be that the spirit at some point just prior to the actual ending of the life really does leave the body. Maybe that's what she experienced. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello, this is Rod. I'm calling from Hampton.
Yes, Rod.
I was telling you about the Yorktown Victory Center and the ghosts that pop up every once in a while there. And being a security guard out there, I
love security guards.
One night happened to have a certain circumstance where I had just finished going through the inside museum area and had glanced over and saw what I thought was George Washington. I glanced back again, I didn't see it. And a few moments later, I was outside going into the forest area out behind the camp. And all of a sudden, I started hearing this sound about 6 feet behind me.
Great.
And I took a few more steps, and I heard coming up behind me, about 6 feet behind me. I glanced up the hill. There were two glowing orange orbs, and I took a few more steps. I looked behind me. Nothing there. Took a few more steps. Sound is still following me. And I'm still seeing these orange-colored orbs up there on the hilltop. And I stopped. And I went back a few more steps. And I went forward. And I heard the sound again. So, being the curious type, I figured something may be following me. And
that was about 16 steps. By now, you should be sure.
Well, I was pretty sure something was behind me.
Yes.
Yeah. And I got to looking on the ground, and there was a feather, a turkey feather, out of one of the animals that had been there in the farm. And it was somehow hooked up to a spider web, and I had crossed over this spider web, and it hooked up to my leg. And that was dragging along behind me, making that sound. But I still had those orange orbs. Maybe a little bit of a fire, I thought, up on the hillside. So I got closer and closer to that. And they had set up a firing range for the black powder muskets. And they had been shooting that. And the two orange orbs that were showing there were a reflection of the light over there in the maintenance area.
So it was nothing.
So it was nothing.
It was nothing. So the whole thing was nothing.
Yeah, but it sure scared the dickens out of me.
All right, Sarah. Well, thank you. There is a story that wasn't. In other words, a perfectly appropriate explanation for everything that happened, sounds and lights combined. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hi, my name's Raven.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a friend named Gary, and he told me this story, so this is secondhand. But he has 3 friends, Steve and Vern and Kim. And his friend Vern had been depressed for a couple of years and had been talking about suicide. So, and he hadn't seen him for a while, so Vern said, can I come over? And he came over, and they hung out together.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vern drove away that night, and he didn't see him for a few days. And then he had this dream. And in the dream, this is my friend's name is Gary, and he hears, Gary. And he's like, who's that? Who's that? And he looks up in the window, and here's Vern. Vern's in the window, and he's going, Gary. And Gary's like, oh, wow, what's Vern doing in the window? And then Vern says, bury me. And Gary, at this point, freaks out, and he wakes up, you know.
I didn't quite get it. Was it bury me?
Bury me, yeah.
Bury me, oh.
In a really scary voice.
Yeah.
And so he wakes up, and anyway, the next night he has the same dream. Gary. And at this point he's thinking, I don't want to look at the window. I don't want to look at the window, but he has to look at the window. You know how dreams are. And there's Vern, and Vern's like, Gary, bury me. And Gary wakes up, you know, and he's terrified. And this goes on for, a few months, and he's, starting to lose sleep. He talks to his friend Steve, and Steve tells him, I've been having these dreams.
Oh, my God.
And by this time, Vern hasn't shown up. Vern's gone. He's just disappeared. And the police have been looking for him and stuff. And Steve says, yeah, I had this dream. And Vern came to me and said, Steve. And I look up, and he's in the window. And there's Vern, and he says,
bury me.
Bury me.
Let me jump to the conclusion. This friend of yours did commit suicide and was later found?
He did commit suicide. And then they talked to their third friend, Kim, and Kim was like,
similar
God,
dreams.
I've been having the dreams too.
Got it. And so this friend actually did commit suicide? Did they finally find the body?
And in each dream, as the months went by, he looked more and more like ugly and decomposing, and after a while there was fungus all over his face and like slime and decay, and he just got more and more messed up, and after I was like, me,
I got it. All right.
It's horrible. This is a true story. And so finally, the next door neighbor came home up to his vacation house next door to Gary's house and pulled into the driveway, and here was Vern's car. And he had a hose going from the exhaust pipe up into the cabin of the car.
And how much time had passed since he committed
6 months.
Oh, my God. So this decomposing guy was entering the dreams of his friends, begging to be buried. Well, they do tell these stories about suicide, don't they? You're on the air, Ghost to Ghost AM 05. Hi. Hello? Yes?
Yeah, okay, it's me.
It's you.
Yeah.
And your name is?
My name is Marilyn from Grafton,
Okay.
Ohio. And, gosh, I don't even hardly know where to begin.
At the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay, that would probably be when I was like 6 years old. I was walking to school, and at this red light, I stopped to cross the street, and I looked both ways, nothing's coming. And I started across the street, and I was hit by this drunken funeral director, and he was driving a hearse. And the next thing I knew, I was like floating above my body. And I looked down, and I saw people in the group on the street there.
And heaven knows your heart must need help after this. You're on the air once again. Hello.
Yeah, hello, Art.
Okay, please continue.
Okay, I was hovering up above the ground, and I noticed a large group of people on the road, and I was curious, so I kind of just floated over, and I looked in there, and I was really startled when I saw myself laying on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I just kind of, that's the last thing I remember. I was like sucked back into my body. That was just like the beginning of everything that started happening to me.
Many, many people who have had near-death experiences have a lot of follow-on stuff happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would get these, what I called visitations at night, before a close friend or a relative in our family would die. I would have visitations by ghosts. And there would always be more than one night of it. So when it started, I would just be terrified because I couldn't fall asleep. I knew it would keep happening and happening. Well, one time, this visitations had started happening to me, and I knew another one was going to come that night. I had the bed pushed up against the wall, and my husband sleeping on the outside. I was kind of afraid there.
Sure.
And I was laying there in bed, just totally terrified, and I could feel like these fingers going up the nape of my neck. And I could feel the fingers were sort of like grabbing the hair. And I knew within myself that if it was able to grab my hair, it would pull me to somewhere. I don't know where, but I didn't want to go there.
I hear you.
So I started screaming, and I woke up my husband. And I had subsequent visitations to that. I would see, like, shadows marching up against the wall.
You know, of course, your story is very similar to other NDE, type experiences that people have had. I mean, I've really interviewed quite a number of people who have had a sort of a brief instant on the other side, and inevitably they have these follow-ups. And I wonder if there is some kind of connection, kind of like, once you've been there, once you've made a connection with the other side, it maintains a connection with you. And a lot of people have precognitive experiences. A lot of people have visitations, much like that young lady was just describing. First-time caller line, you're on the air. Hi. Hello?
Good evening, Art.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Before anything else, may I say thank you for this marvelous entertainment that continues night after week after month after year.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Marvelous. Several years ago, when I was just breaking into the trucking industry, I was traveling across the middle of California on Highway 152. There's a very large reservoir up in the hills between the San Jose Valley and the San Joaquin Valley.
Yes, sir.
And lovely summer night, just marvelous. And I'm driving along about half asleep in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden, out of the blue comes this little voice, says, "Lovely night." And I kind of looked off to the right side of the cab, and just a fleeting glimpse of this blonde girl in a white full-skirted dress. And I thought, okay, too many miles, too many hours. I kept on going. There was a Demis about 20 miles in front of me. I was going to stop at for coffee.
Good for you.
Which I did. And reaching over to the right side of the cab, it was a cab over, so of course there's a engine cover there that I had to lean over, and I put my hand on the right seat to roll up the window that I'd had partially open.
Right.
The seat was wet. I thought, well, that's rather odd. It was a lovely summer night. It wasn't raining, nothing going on, no heavy dew or anything like that.
Right.
I hadn't run into anything. So I proceeded to get coffee and go about my business. And a couple of months later, I was talking to a couple of drivers in the truck stop in San Jose that's no longer there. And they were relating this story about this couple that had gone off the road up in the Pacheco Pass years before. The new husband had survived, but his bride of just earlier that evening had drowned there.
And let me guess. The other truckers had experienced the same thing.
No, they hadn't. They just were relating the story. We were just kind of kicking it around. And like I say, this was a couple of months after this experience. I had not heard the story before. I just thought it was rather odd that the seat was wet.
I should say. I appreciate the call. Thank you. I would think that would be the repetitive kind of thing. That worries me, has always worried me. This apparent repetitive action that people seem to experience in these stories. I mean, in death, that they do the same thing again and again and again, a hell of its own, really, if you think about it. But again, it does lead one toward the possibility that all we're experiencing and all we're noticing is some kind of, I don't know, endless tape loop, sort of a vibration that remains, but not really a ghost as we think of a soul. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, good morning, Art.
Good morning.
Yeah, Walt from Pennsylvania.
Yes, Walt.
850 WNTJ, Johnstown.
Yes, sir.
You have to excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold right now, so if I sound a little hoarse to you, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Back in 95, me, my dad, and a friend of ours, we were out hunting. There's about a foot and a half of snow out there, and we go back in our tree stand, separate up, and around about lunchtime, we meet up with my dad on his tree stand. We're sitting there having lunch, and look out across the hillside there in the thicket. My dad says, "Look at that." He said, "There's a guy and a woman over there," and he's holding her hand, and they're making tracks up through the woods, up through this thicket, and we're looking at him, and he has a long sleeve dress shirt on, dress pants, and dress shoes. She has a white dress on with high heels. Now, there's 18 inches of snow out there, and it's about 10 degrees out, and we're all bundled up and like, what the heck are they doing back there?
Not very appropriate.
No, not very appropriate at all. So my buddy pulls his binoculars out, and he's looking at them, and I pull mine out of my pack. We're looking at them, too, and, all of a sudden, we're checking them out, and they just, disappear. So towards the end of the day, maybe about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're working our way out to go home, and we're looking at the tracks in the snow. There was no foot tracks from them.
No foot tracks.
There was ours. There were tracks from deer, but there was no foot tracks from them.
Again, that's kind of like some kind of slip. It's, almost like you went to another time or another time came to you, or there was some little window of something that just should not have been.
Well, it's more like, I think it was more like there was a window that came to us because about 3/4 of a mile from us used to be an old farm up at this place. It's up in the state park. And there was an old farm up there because we found foundation stones from 1810, 1835 up here. And, kind of wondering, geez, wonder what happened back then that you see a young guy and a young woman, and they're making tracks up through the woods, and when you leave for the day, you see no tracks in the snow from them. And it didn't snow, and the snow didn't melt. So,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I've got it. All right, thank you very much. Well, there have been quite a few like that tonight, haven't there? Sort of little shifts or little immersions into different times, like the lady with all the contemporary things that were actually really old. Not dusty, brand new, just used, but really old. That's kind of like you went to a different place, a different time. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Hi.
I got one that's a little different approach, and I'm going to speed it up as quick as possible.
All right, please.
About 4 years ago, I was with this girl who came from a very broken home. Her mother was killed in a car accident, and her father abused her, so she was kind of off-balanced, and I didn't realize that she was off-balanced until we moved in together. But in the middle of the night, going on 3, 4 in the morning, I had to get up and be at work at 6 in the morning.
Yes.
So I wake up and have an attack of what appears to be sleep paralysis, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
I am.
And I had never had this happen to me before, kind of, unfamiliar with it. And I battled with this for about 5 minutes and then fell immediately back into a deep sleep. Into this sleep, I was in this dream state where I was in like a grayish-like hallway, and I saw my grandfather who had committed suicide when I was about 6 months old. And I went to approach him and hug him, and he pops me right in the nose.
Oh.
Bloodies my nose in the dream, and we're struggling. And a woman in a blue gown came and got my grandfather off of me and told me it's going to be okay. She's just confused. I'm so sorry.
Wow.
So when I wake up, I snap immediately back, just completely awake, not the least bit tired, and there's my ex-girlfriend, and she is bawling. I mean, completely in tears. Couldn't get a word out of her for an hour. And finally, when I did get a word out of her, she said, "What does she mean that I'm confused?" And I said, well, what are you talking about? She said, I heard her voice through you. And I heard a groan. And at that moment, Art, my nose gushed blood.
Oh, my God.
So you be the judge. Thank you for all these wonderful shows. You have a great night.
Yeah, thank you very much for contributing to it as well. Well, I guess my first reaction would be that you really did not escape the paralysis, that you really didn't fall, obviously, back into a normal sleep after the paralysis, but instead you in some way gave in to the paralysis, and voila, what followed? You can fight off this sleep paralysis and wake yourself up or whatever, but that's not what happened to you. You immersed yourself into it. You're on the air Ghost to Ghost AM with Art Bell. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Art.
What is your first name?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm a little nervous.
That's all right.
My first name is Diana.
Diana.
And I'm calling from Brighton, Colorado.
Excellent.
My true story, my experience happened some years ago when I was attending the School for the Visually Impaired in Louisiana. And I was about 16, 17, around that age. And I had just laid down to bed, and I was living in a dorm. And my room was like at the end of the hall, and I was the only one in that room.
Were you completely sightless?
No, I'm totally blind in one eye and have some vision in the other.
I see. Okay.
And so I just lay down for bed and starting to doze off, and all of a sudden I hear this like kicking at the wall outside. And I'm like, okay, what in the world is going on? Maybe it's some of the boys that are playing a prank, you know?
Sure.
So I get up and I look out the window, open the window, okay, nothing out there. Okay, go back to sleep. Then I start hearing scratch at the screen. I'm like, oh, okay, now this is getting ridiculous.
By now, you probably figure somebody's messing with you.
Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, it's like, I got to get some sleep. I got to get to school, you know? So I lay down again, start to doze off, and then I hear this voice that goes, sleep now, Diana. It's okay. And I'm like, all right. And the next thing I know, I wake up and my bed starts shaking.
Oh.
The room, everything in the room just starts like crackling all over, and then I look toward my closet door, and there's this face, this like orangish red face with these reddish fire eyes and these horns on the head and like a black hood over the head, and it's like getting brighter and bigger, and it's like I'm frozen, and I'm like, oh God, what do I do, you know? And the only thing I knew to do was just say, God, get me out of here. And the next thing I know, I'm running, but my feet aren't touching the floor. It's like something's carrying me out of that room, and I ran to my best friend's room, and I said, something happened. She says, well, take it easy, you know, just sleep in my room tonight. And I didn't go back in that room for the rest of the night.
Well, I'm not laughing because anything's funny, only because it's sort of so classic. I mean, running and you can't go anywhere, you know, feet up in the air. It's just the worst of the worst.
But I mean, that face, that has just haunted me all my life, seeing that.
I imagine it would. What conclusion do you now, when you think about it now, you're older, what do you think?
I don't know. Maybe something just trying to scare me because it knew things in my future, good things in my future that were going to happen to me. Maybe trying to scare me. I don't know. I could never figure it out. But I mean, I've had other little scares through my life, you know, where certain little things have happened, like trying to stop me from doing things or, you know. But that was the most, oof.
Maybe you have some sort of guardian angel.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I do.
All right. Thank you very much for the story. Have a good night.
Thanks so much,
Right.
Art.
Take care. West of the Rockies, you're on Ghost to Ghost AM 05. Hello.
Is this me, Art?
That's you.
Hi, happy Halloween.
Same to you. And what is
Art.
your first name?
My name is Zach.
Vac?
Zach.
Zach. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Zach. Welcome.
All right, thanks. Well, let's see. When I was a boy, we lived in this house in Oregon City, Oregon. I think I was about 6 years old when we moved in there. And in Oregon City, there are a lot of historical homes. It's built right at the end of the Oregon Trail.
Right.
And this house was one of those. We still had the old clawfoot bathtubs and the old, Art Deco light fixtures, and everything was original to the house.
Sure.
Anyway, it was a spooky old place. I mean, you just looked at it, and it was weird looking. It was a spooky house. And I'd play around in the basement, building forts and whatnot, and our landlords lived across the street. And I remember one day I was talking to the landlord, and in casual conversation, he brought up the fact that, wow, there was a ghost that lived upstairs in their house of an old lady that had died there. I didn't pursue the matter, what that was all about. But not too long after that, things started happening around our house. Little lights going on and off, and strange sounds in the house. And every time I was in the basement, I felt like I was being watched. All right, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Huh.
And
it sounds like poltergeist stuff. Lights on and off.
Right.
How about things moving?
I personally didn't see anything move, but you could hear like chairs sliding across the floor and footsteps, that type thing.
Right.
So being a little kid, my mom, my brothers and I tried to tell my mom and dad, and they just kind of poo-pooed it, overactive imagination type thing. And I'm really nervous, forgive me.
Oh, no, you're doing fine. You're doing great.
This is great. And, this went on for, I forget how long. I was pretty young. Until about the summer that I was 11. And my mother and I were alone in the house. My brothers were outside playing. And she had laid down on the couch for a nap. Well, I'm in the bathroom, and I'm taking a bath in this old bathtub. And playing with my toys, whatnot. And all of a sudden, I feel a hand on the back of my neck kind of stroking me up and down, like just a really loving caress type thing. And it just freaked me out. So I jumped straight up and yelled for my mother. Of course, she didn't hear me. Well, right about that time, this is where it got really spooky.
Okay, we're way short on time.
Okay,
so.
sir. Anyway, I could feel snakes falling off the ceiling and hitting me on the head. And as they did, they would slither down my body. I could feel them and plopping right into the bathtub. I could hear everything. It was just, I freaked. I jumped out, ran into the living room. Actually, I yelled, "Stop it." This is the bad part. Because when I yelled, "Stop it," this voice, this cackle, it was the most evil, hideous laugh I have ever heard, and I have never forgotten it. And it was in the bathroom with me, and it was just, I still can't even, I had to go to a priest and talk to him actually. Because
well, that is exactly where we're going to have to end it. Take care, buddy.
Okay, thanks,
I
Art.
appreciate the stories.
Welcome to Dreamland, a program dedicated to an examination of areas in the human experience not easily nor neatly put in a box. Things seen at the edge of vision, awakening a part of the mind as yet not mapped, and yet things every bit as real as the air we breathe but don't see. This is Dreamland.
It certainly is. Another Sunday evening in Dreamland underway.
Life sometimes is funny. As you know, we have this technology called Vidian that allows the people with the software out there to call up and see me in the studio doing my program. We're demonstrating that software now, and I can tell you how to get it. But there was just somebody online just before I came on the air, and as you know, I'm smoking again. She saw me sitting here smoking. She said, "Stop that." So I held the cigarette up to the camera. She said, "No." I took a deep drag and blew some smoke at the camera. I was watching the picture, and you could see the smoke cascading toward the camera. It was funny, and this big line of nose comes across the screen. Well, anyway, good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. Our guest tonight is going to be fascinating, and it's a program that I've been wanting to do for years, and I've never had the right person. Well, I sure do tonight. His name is Larry Arnold, and he has written an excellent book called The Mysterious Fires of Spontaneous Human Combustion. Actually, it's called Ablaze, The Mysterious Fires of Spontaneous Human Combustion, and it is fascinating. And I've got some photographs, and I want to add those who call tonight on video, and I will try and hold up a very critical photograph that we're not going to be allowed to put on the bulletin board, but we are going to publish in the newsletter. It will be one of the cases Larry is going to talk about. So all of that, Linda Howe, of course, Emmy Award-winning Linda Howe, coming up here in just a few moments to begin the program as usual. All right. The documentary, Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist looking into crop circles, animal mutilations, and stuff going on in Puerto Rico. It's Linda Howe from Philadelphia. Hi, Linda.
I'm here.
Good.
Okay. Well, thanks. And tonight I have an update on the Puerto Rico Chupacabras mystery and a very similar phenomena occurring also in the nation of Mexico that we have not heard much about.
Oh?
Earlier today, I talked with reporters at El Vocero newspaper in San Juan about a recent police report in the town of Aguas Buenas. That's one of the places in which the Chupacabras attacks have been reported the past few months. This new police report is dated March 4, 1996, which was last Monday, and states that 30 fighting cock roosters, each valued at several $100s, were found in their individual cages, dead with clean puncture holes in their back along the spine or on the legs. The police used the term, quote, vampire bite, because there were 2 holes about an inch apart, and on some of the roosters there were 2 pairs of bites, or 4 holes. According to the police, there was no blood around the punctures, and despite the neatness of the wounds, violence had been done to the cages. The police report said that doors had been pulled off or bent off the cages. Other strange bird deaths have been reported, and recently I talked to Dr. Carlos Soto, who received his doctorate of veterinary medicine from Kansas State University in 1988. He then went back to Puerto Rico to treat both large and small animals. He has been very puzzled by some of the necropsies that he has done on animals allegedly attacked by this Chupacabras, including various kinds of birds. This is Dr. Carlos Soto.
Turkeys and some guinea hens, in which they had all a puncture wound half a centimeter in diameter at the base of the skull.
So it's puncture right through the feathers into the tissue.
Exactly. And the one that I'm going to explain you, it had 2 puncture wounds, one in the right and left thorax. So let's imagine again we have a right and left puncture wound.
Right. Okay. And the bird is on its back.
On its back, and no more external puncture wounds. That's it.
Okay, 2.
2, right and left side.
Okay.
When I just opened the bird, okay? On its pectoral muscle, okay?
Right.
It had 4 on the right side, 4 additional wounds in which they didn't appear on the outside of the skin.
Okay, and there was no bruising on the outside?
No bruising on the outside or anything. Some parts of the liver were missing on that hand.
So in that animal and in others, Dr. Soto has found tissue actually extracted from inside the bodies of birds or of a goat without any excisions on the outside, as well as these puzzling 4 holes on the inside without 4 puncture holes on the outside. And I saw photographs of exactly that phenomena at the University of Puerto Rico Medical Center.
How would a pathologist try to explain that, the 4 inside holes, without 4 outside holes?
Well, he's very puzzled, and right now there isn't a logical explanation. We're all working on this, and researcher Alfonso Salazar Mendoza sent me newspaper articles from the state of Mexico down in the nation of Mexico. The newspaper is La Prensa, and they are calling their phenomena there the vampire of Jaltepec. Jaltepec is a town southeast of Veracruz, and nearly 100 domestic animals there have been found since 1994 with 4 puncture holes in their necks. These stories have not been filtering up to the United States. I've just been getting them and finding that while we have been looking at Puerto Rico, very similar sorts of events have been happening across the water in Mexico. And one of the farmers told La Prensa, this is a quote, "We can't explain why the attacker just kills the animals and doesn't eat them, and how it attacks the animals, and we don't know it. The yearling calves, the horse, and the chickens that have died don't make a sound that wakes us up at night. And what's more, the dogs don't bark." Well, I've heard almost the identical sentences said to me in interviews in Puerto Rico. How does this happen in some of these cases without anybody hearing anything? In other cases, they hear birds fluttering and they hear sounds. So again, we have those inconsistencies. But Dr. Soto told me that he has looked at some of the punctured tissue under a microscope, and he sees what he thinks is evidence of heating or burn, which is very similar to what Dr. Altschuler and I and others have found in the animal mutilations that we've studied here in this country. But when Dr. Soto sent the tissue onto the Dorado lab in Puerto Rico, and that was supposed to have been sent to a lab in the United States, the findings came back to him eventually as normal, with no signs of burn. He's puzzled by that also because he said, I'm looking at the tissue fresh under the microscope in my veterinarian office, and he said it looks to me like it has suffered heat or it could be chemical, but the reports have come back normal, and he doesn't understand that either. So we're all trying to continue to find out more.
Linda, what kind of cages are these, and what kind of horse would be required to either bend them or you said melt?
Bend, or they were bent off or literally pulled off, according to this police report. And I interviewed 2 or 3 weeks ago, not for Dreamland, because his Spanish English was not good enough for us to understand here. But we were working through a translator on the phone. And what I understood was that in a town that would be south of Dorado on the north end of Puerto Rico, and this goes back to August, there were, I believe it was 14 or 17 chickens that had been inside of a metal framed cage. It had cyclone kinds of fence wire and it had cage. And they found the cage torn apart, and all of those chickens were dead with these same strange puncture holes. And they said that the violence that had been done to the cage was puzzling. And there have been other cases where they have said that everything from chicken wire to metal cages have been torn apart, suggesting strength. And yet the animals themselves are not torn apart. They simply have these puncture holes, which makes this truly a mystery.
What is the actual cause of death? Are they able to determine that?
In one case that Dr. Soto investigated of a Doberman Pinscher female dog, the cause of death was strangulation, and the entire neck showed trauma. He also found congested blood that would occur in the case of strangulation. And yet the eyewitness, the owner of the dog, said that the creature that he saw with his own eyes attack his dog looked like, and this was the exact quote of the veterinarian, a large bat. So now we're back to the description of something that flew from a tree down onto the dog, and the owner watched it and couldn't believe his eyes.
When they say large, how large?
He said approximately 3 feet.
That's a big bat.
And there was these descriptions of whatever these flying things are is not typical with anything that is known to inhabit Puerto Rico. And it also is not the same description of the alleged Chupacabras, which is supposed to be sort of humanoid-like. It's a very, very continuing, puzzling story, and it continues to occur.
This is driving me nuts, and I'm sure it's driving you nuts, too.
Well, and also, Art, to realize that the same kinds of puncture holes have been occurring over in the nation of Mexico, across the water from Puerto Rico and south of us, shows that a lot of places may be having this similar phenomena, but it's simply not reaching us in the media.
Well, something else to bear in mind. Now, I had not heard about Mexico, but if it's in Mexico, when it's in Puerto Rico, you might imagine this is something that crawled up out of the swamp there, some new breed, or you might imagine a lot of things. But if it's in Mexico, then it could be here. Right?
Well, there certainly have, every once in a while, there have been these stories of strange, what we have called in the United States, biopsy punch holes. There's a case I'm working on right now. We don't have all the lab tests back yet. I will eventually report on it, but I can tell you this. There is a horse in South Dakota that was found February 14th, a 6-7-year-old female, and she had a 1/2 inch by 2 inch hole right below the ear and back of the jaw. The horse is alive to date, and that hole was in the process of healing. And I learned that in Mexico, in one of these reports there in Zacatecas, a yearling calf was found alive with 4 holes in its neck, and the calf continued to live. And that is even more puzzling. What is it? What is the reason for these puncture holes by whatever it is that does the attacking that is leaving basically the entire animal untouched after the puncture hole?
Whew. Well, whatever it is, I hope it doesn't come here. Thank you very much. Linda, a wonderful report as usual, puzzling as usual, but wonderful. And give everybody a way to contact you, get your materials, whatever you would like to do.
Yeah, thanks. From everything from whether it's unusual animal deaths or marks that could be in the crop circle area to the human abduction syndrome to all of the unusual phenomena in this planet. I love hearing your reports and your comments and your questions. My new mailing address is Post Office Box 300, Jameson, Jamison, Pennsylvania, zip code 18929-0300. My toll-free 800 number for information about my books and my documentaries and to leave a brief message is 1-800-707-9993. Again, that's 800-707-9993. And for anyone who might want to fax, it's area code 215-491-9842.
Wonderful. We shall be looking forward to your report next week. And I want to know what that thing is.
All right. I keep trying.
All right, Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Right, big bat, 3-foot bat. We have little bats out here, and they fly around sometimes at sunset, and I go out and have fun throwing rocks at them, which never hit them because they always sense it and dart away. But they're fun to throw rocks at. Maybe I should reconsider if one of their larger family members makes it up this far. One night, someone sitting in front of the television is in an easy chair. The next morning, he or she, nothing but a pile of ash and a sweet smell. A shrunken head, perhaps an intact leg with a foot still in the shoe. I've got that photograph here. The chair has a burnt hole in it. Maybe the phone on a nearby table, slightly melted, but no evidence of an ordinary fire. It takes an incredible amount of heat to shrink a skull, thousands of degrees, literally. Yet the living room around it remains untouched. The above description reads kind of like a plot for The Twilight Zone, but in fact it is true. It is happening to unsuspecting people all over the world. In a blaze, the mysterious fires of spontaneous human combustion. Larry Arnold, America's foremost expert, that's right, on spontaneous human combustion, or SHC, investigates hundreds of cases, both famous and obscure. 20 years of research has gone into this book. Interviews with survivors, yes, some, firemen, coroners, morticians, as well as chemists, physicists, and biologists. Arnold explores the effects on the fragile human body of television radiation, alcohol and smoking, inactivity and anger, all of which can, under the right circumstances, cause people to burn to ashes in 30 minutes or less. That is what's coming up. Coming next, Larry Arnold, author of Ablaze, The Mysterious Fires of Spontaneous Human Combustion. I think I've been close. All right, we will break here and be back with Larry. Stay right where you are. This is Dreamland. Larry Arnold is America's foremost expert on spontaneous human combustion. The book he's written reflects 20 years of research, contains 300 actual cases of SHC, spontaneous human combustion, ranging from the 14th century to present. Arnold founded Parascience International in 1976 to investigate paranormal topics. He's also a founding member of Life Spectrums, a non-profit educational corporation devoted to spirituality and human potential, has appeared on numerous national radio and TV shows, including NBC TV's The Other Side, Fox TV's Sightings, American Journal, CBS TV's The Fifth Estate, and 5 times on ABC TV's That's Incredible. Born in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, he attended Norfolk College, majored in mechanical engineering. After graduating, worked as an engineer for 5 years. Since 1976, he's been documenting and investigating paranormal activities exactly like the one we're about to talk about. And here he is from, I guess, somewhere in Pennsylvania, Larry Arnold. Larry, where are you?
Hi, Art. We're calling and speaking with you and your millions of listeners from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Harrisburg. Very good. Well, we're sure glad to have you on the program.
We're delighted to be with you all.
All right. I have been for years, Larry, looking for somebody who knew something about this, and it is not exactly a widely investigated topic, is it?
No, it's not. And that's one reason that it's been so easily dismissed as something that needs to be studied. Not many people have chosen to look seriously at this alleged phenomenon.
Ooh, alleged?
Well, the debunkers would have us say that just to be cautious and intellectually honest.
Would you say that?
No, we would not. Spontaneous human combustion, just to set up the premise and to define it for those who may not be able to think just what this entails, is the process and ability whereby the human body will begin to smoke or burst into flame without coming in contact with an external identifiable source of ignition. And mainstream science, not surprisingly, as we've already alluded to, says that this is something that is simply impossible and doesn't even deserve to be thought about. On the other hand, if that's the case, then we've got a very, very short program to deal with for the next several minutes. You might have better call up Linda Howe and get her to talk about something.
Well, you know, one almost might dismiss it that way, except for one little thing, all the evidence.
Hey, there you go. You've got the bottom line. I like the way you think.
Well, I have eyes, and I have this photograph in front of me, and it is only one of many. You included the black and white photograph of a doctor who apparently burned up. It's in a bathroom, and it's pretty gory. But all that's left is a leg and a shoe and the very small area in the bathroom where the fire occurred. Seems impossible.
It does seem impossible, and what you've described is what we would call a classic scene of spontaneous human combustion. It is horrible, it is eerie, but it's also downright fascinating. And for something that sounds like The Twilight Zone, it is definitely that, but it's also X-Files and Gothic horror and Stephen King all wrapped up into one real-life flaming phenomenon.
All right, I got a piece of email from somebody prior to the show. We have a large email network. And this person says, I've heard 2 possible explanations for spontaneous human combustion. One is that the normal chemical processes in the body are assisted by a catalyst that somehow goes wild, I guess. The other is that the body, the clothes rather on the body, acts kind of like a candle. This one has been shown to be possible in a lab setting using a cadaver. And people go on and on here. I've got a lot of comments on it. Your best guess, what is it that causes this?
Well, you're leaping right to the bottom line. What could cause spontaneous human combustion?
I guess I am.
It is clearly an aberrant electrical discharge within the body or induced in the body from an external source that is not readily apparent. And beyond that, we can get into more specifics later. As far as your email that says, that this is possibly a chemical process that goes haywire, yes, we would support that. And in our book Ablaze, we offer a number of theories that become more specific as how the biochemical and bioelectrical processes in the human cauldron that is our bodies could engender tremendous thermogenesis very quickly. To the other premise that this is explained away as the human candle wick, no, we're going to debunk that. At least we think that we can quite vigorously.
I think they've also said, haven't they, Larry, that it's smokers, laying in bed or the wrong place. But gee, I'm a smoker. And I'll tell you, Larry, much as I hate the fact, I've dropped a few cherries in my lap, a couple times even asleep. And both times it got my immediate screeching attention.
And you're obviously still here to talk about it.
Yeah, I didn't catch on fire. I got burned, and I got very angry. And so I refuse to believe that it's smokers. I mean,
and those burns probably hurt, too, didn't they?
Oh, that's what I say. It got my screeching attention. I was jumping up and down.
People do die in smoking accidents. Sometimes they're not always jolted awake. They may have had a heart attack or a stroke, or for some other reason they're insensitive to their immediate predicament, and they will burn up. But they do not burn up in the conditions that define the classic scene of spontaneous human combustion. They do not burn up and leave behind a scene that you just described in opening the segment, that which happened to Dr. Bentley here in Pennsylvania back in 1966. In those cases of smoking accidents, the body is still left sufficiently intact that it can be picked up, transported to a morgue, and autopsied. And then there's a cadaver left to be buried. In classic spontaneous human combustion, that is not the case. The body will be reduced almost completely to a pile of dehydrated dust, leaving behind a few extremities, perhaps the lower leg, the forearms, for example, to prove to the observers at the scene that this pile of ash had once belonged to a human being.
Can you kind of give us the chronology or what happened to this doctor whose photograph I've got?
We'd love to do that, and that sets up a really complete understanding of this amazing phenomenon that we're going to be discussing for a bit with you folks. In 1966, Dr. John Irving Bentley was a 92-year-old retired physician living in Coudersport here in north-central Pennsylvania. Now, Dr. Bentley was beloved by the entire community. He apparently had no enemies in the world. The evening of December 4, about 9 o'clock, he was left by some friends in his home alone for the rest of the evening, apparently in good spirits and in good health. The following morning, about 9 a.m., a local meter reader named Don Gosnell entered Dr. Bentley's home to go down to the basement to read the gas meter, as was normal practice. When Mr. Gosnell was down in the basement, after he read the gas meter, he noticed in one corner of the earthen floor was a small pile of ash about 5 inches in height and 14 inches in diameter. Well, Mr. Gosnell, besides being a meter reader, was also a volunteer fireman. So that pile of ash obviously got his curiosity up, and he walked over and kicked it with his boot. There was no embers in that pile of ash. It was clearly cold. He noticed overhead, directly above this pile of ash, was a 2 by 3 foot hole in the basement ceiling. Well, he thought to himself, he told us later, that there must have been a small fire in Dr. Bentley's home that night, but it had to have been small because there was no fire alarm called in, and secondly, the fire had to be sufficiently small that it self-extinguished. Well, his curiosity was still intact, and he went back upstairs. This time he noticed that there was a wispy smoke in the corridor of the home, and there was a sweetish smell pervading the atmosphere. Well, Mr. Gosnell knocked on Dr. Bentley's door and did not get an answer, stuck his head inside the apartment door, peered into the living room, and saw nothing amiss, walked into Dr. Bentley's one-room apartment, which had an adjoining bathroom, and when Mr. Gosnell peered into Dr. Bentley's bathroom, there he saw the other side of the hole that he just left in the basement. Lying next to that hole, as you've already described to your listeners, was one half of a human leg lying next to the hole, intact, wearing its leather slipper. Askew atop the hole was Dr. Bentley's aluminum walker, and at this point, Mr. Gosnell told us that he realized what he had just kicked with his boot in the floor below. That was the remains of Dr. Bentley's self-cremated body. Gosnell ran from the house, white as a ghost, he told us, and yelled the understatement of the year to some of his co-workers, "Dr. Bentley's burned up." and indeed the good doctor had, but in ways that were completely unexplained and indeed unrecognized and unappreciated by the locals back in 1966 in northern Pennsylvania. Dr. Bentley, in essence, had managed to do the impossible. He had incinerated himself more completely than a crematorium can normally do under normal operating parameters in a room that was almost completely devoid of other fire damage, save for the hole in the floor through which his body had actually burned. Next to that hole besides his left leg was a bathtub that had been painted with enamel paint. We were at that apartment. We were in the bathroom. We checked the paint on the bathtub. It had not even been blistered by this incredible inferno that had incinerated Dr. Bentley himself.
Possible.
That is quintessential spontaneous human combustion in our view, and it certainly cannot be explained so far as we've been able to ascertain in our 20 years of research by the so-called human candle wick or drop cigarette theory.
All right. Look, the human body, and I can't quote the figure, but we're more liquid, blood, whatever, water than we are anything else, aren't we?
That's true. The human body is about 70 to 80% water, depending on specific composition or weight of any individual.
I know my wife periodically claims greater content. But, you know, no matter whether it's 70 or 80%, it seems to me that couldn't burn.
Well, that's one of the amazing paradoxes and quandaries of this phenomenon, and that's what common sense would tell you and would tell firemen initially. The human body is mostly water. And the reason that fire professionals like water so much is because it quells temperature, it lowers temperature, it puts out fire.
Right.
So when you have a substance that is composed of mostly water, then how in the world could it burn? With that amount of water present, surely that water would preclude ignition and combustion rather than engender it. However, in a blaze, we do explore some biochemical and bioelectrical means and indeed look at the quantum physics of water and processes in a body that could explain how, even with that amount of water present, that the human body could still self-combust and burn itself from within.
All right. I know that, Larry, when some people get older and they lose a mate or they lose their reason or will to live, they die. Now, what about the psychosomatic aspects of this? In other words, could it be that the individuals are either tired of living, simply want to die, and, you know, the brain is an amazing thing. We use about 10% of it. So as I say in a promo, I don't know what makes us think we know it all. Could there be something in the brain that actually triggers a chemical process because somebody wants to go?
That is a very precocious question, and we think that there is indeed a connection. We have found in the few cases where we've been able to quantify some psychological profile information about these victims, that indeed in many cases, though not all cases, the individual is morose, is very depressed, is having suicidal tendencies, quite often as a widow or widower, which are tying with the point that you just raised.
Sure.
And we think that all those conditions come together in a state of consciousness that interacts with the biological and biophysical processes of that individual to set up inflammatory conditions.
Huh. In what percentage of the cases, I guess, you know, it must take a lot of careful investigation. In other words, you hear of something like this, then you've got to begin looking not just at the scene, but at that person's life and recent influences, and you've literally got to go in almost as a forensic detective.
Yes, we do. But the kinds of information that we've been looking for in an attempt to resolve the mysteries of spontaneous human combustion requires a degree of investigation and an approach to investigation that goes far beyond what normal fire science is accustomed to doing. Firemen, when they mop up a fire scene, will be looking for mostly evidence of an accelerant.
Sure.
And if they don't find an accelerant, something that would fuel the flames, you know, they write it off as basically, you know, electrical fire or careless mishap. If they find evidence of an accelerant, then the next question that comes up to is either it's foul play or it was, you know, intentionally willed suicide by dousing the victim with, you know, gasoline or kerosene or some other flame-inducing material. We have to go even far beyond that because first, spontaneous human combustion in its classic sense burns the body more completely than can be done even if accelerants are used. And in these cases, when research is done by the fire officials initially, they do not find an accelerant to begin with.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. In other words, in the case, for example, of the doctor in this photograph, there's part of the leg left.
Right.
one presumes they would look very carefully at that for evidence and the surrounding floor and so forth of any accelerant. And they would look for any evidence of, with what's left of the leg, gross as it may sound, some biological reason for what occurred.
Precisely.
Anything found?
Nothing was found in the case of Dr. Bentley and in many other cases that are very much like his in the nature of the fire damage and the surrounding lack of fire damage to the immediate environment. Again, no accelerants are found, and in fact, in some cases where autopsies have been conducted on the few remnants left of these victims, there's no liquid moisture content found in the limbs at all, not even any blood samples. It's like the water molecule, the water content of the body has been completely dehydrated.
Oh, my. Now, that is interesting.
That is interesting, and it provides some interesting clues as to the process and mechanism which may be unfolding in these people.
I mean, I've heard of dehydration, but that's ridiculous. But again, no blood?
No blood.
Blood. No moisture in the tissue.
That's what we are told by the forensics people who have conducted those investigations. You sound speechless.
I am a little bit. I just, I can see in this photograph, gross as it is, that there is enough of the leg left that there should have been, in other words, it looks like what's left of a human being, clearly, and though it didn't burn, and though it may have been warmed by the fire itself, there certainly should have been traces of bodily fluids left in the leg. So what could do that? What in the world could do that? And, well, let me try this. How many cases that you believe to be spontaneous human combustion do you believe have occurred that have been documented by yourself or others?
In a blaze, we list more than 300 cases that fit the definition of spontaneous human combustion. Now, some of those may have normal conventional explanations. In many cases, these are old events from, 150, 200, 300 years ago. Mm-hmm. So at that time, insufficient evaluation and documentation of the fire scene was done. However, in the cases from the latter part of this century, where in some instances very detailed, thorough investigation was done at the fire scene, we come up with amazing evidence that simply falls outside the parameters and understanding of mainstream fire science and science in general. And that's where we get into the mysteries of spontaneous human combustion. This is a long-hidden medical malady that we believe has confronted mankind for several thousands of years.
Well, how does science, how do medical doctors and coroners and people like that treat it in some of the more obvious cases of real spontaneous human combustion? What do they generally list the cause of? Do they ever list the cause of death that way?
In general, they treat it with disbelief. Officially, they will write these deaths off, as in the case of Dr. Bentley. His death, keep in mind the fire scene that we just described to you and your listeners, and the photograph that you're showing on your new technology. His death was described as that of asphyxiation. Officially, that is how Dr. Bentley died.
Well, I suppose so, as he burned up.
As he burned up, at some point, yes, he suffocated. But when you read in a coroner's report on an autopsy document asphyxiation, you don't imagine or visualize a scene like we've described happened to Dr. Bentley. And
of course not.
Found there.
Of course not.
So it's a bit disingenuous to attribute cause of death to asphyxiation in a case like that. As we talked to the deputy coroner in that case, he told us that if he were truly rewriting the autopsy report, he would say that there was 99% destruction of the human body. Now, that goes far beyond asphyxiation.
It sure does.
In other instances, these accounts are written off as smoking mishaps, or as we talked about earlier, a carelessly dropped cigarette, although, once again, that's not only disingenuous, it's actually dishonest to claim that. We've talked to medical examiners who have considered spontaneous human combustion because what they encountered first defied everything that they've been trained medically to experience at a fire scene. And yet they've told us that to invoke spontaneous human combustion is so bizarre and strains credulity to such an extent that they're terrified to put that down officially as cause of death.
All right, Larry, hold it right there. We'll be right back to you. This is Dreamland.
And now, enjoy this encore presentation of Dreamland with Art Bell.
I received this from Jamie. This is just one of gazillions that I have, but this is a practical application for it, so I thought that I would read it to you. Art, it was bound to happen. sooner or later. And all I can say is I'm glad I was prepared. The only thing I asked for as a birthday present this year was the Bajan AM/FM shortwave radio with a light. Thankfully, my lovely wife knew how serious I was about wanting this appliance. We called it an appliance. Until last week, it was just an interesting conversation piece. It is that, by the way. I mean, you wind it, the radio goes for 30 minutes. He says, interesting conversation piece, that is, until the lights went out. We were hit hard here in the Northwest by the Pineapple Express, and subsequently the power at our house was knocked out for more than 24 hours. Of course, one of the first things we did was set up the Bajan with a light. The radio kept us entertained, informed throughout the course of the storm. As a matter of fact, performed flawlessly. Without a doubt, it's one of the smartest purchases I've ever, in capitals, made. Jamie Walker, Senior Systems Analyst. Thank you, Jamie. All right, getting faxes already for Larry with questions, and we'll get to those in a second. If you want to send a fax, it is area code 702-727-8499. 702-727-8499. Item 2, we are now on the Internet. 2 locations. So to get to them, a WOAI being the latest in San Antonio, carrying real audio and carrying this program. So go to my webpage at Art Bell. Actually, it's www.artbell.com. And you can actually hear the program running live. www.artbell.com. And if you don't have the software for it, they will be able to download it to you at that location. Now, back to Larry Arnold. Larry, are you there?
Yes, we are, Art.
Oh, excellent. A couple of questions by fax. Art, could you ask Larry if he's heard or read of the story of the lady who died in Riverside, California last year, whose body and blood fumes made the hospital staff sick, and if he did, is there any relationship with SHC?
Yes, we do know about the Hernandez case. Initially, we do not think it's a case of classic spontaneous human combustion. It is very abnormal, and to our knowledge, there is still medical problems being suffered by one of the operating room physicians. And to our knowledge, no one has yet come up with an adequate explanation. There's some interesting speculations that have been bandied about in 40 Times, for example. It doesn't fit the classic scene of spontaneous human combustion. That much we can say with reasonable confidence, but it's quite anomalous what did happen there.
All right, here's a really interesting one from Hawaii. Besides spontaneous self-immolation, is there any evidence to support that an individual or group through psychokinesis could actually inflict this on another?
Delicate question. We discussed that possibility in Ablaze. We think the answer is yes.
Oh? Oh, no. I say that from a talk show person's point of view. If somebody, I'm sure at different times during my show, if they could have caused me to go ablaze, they would have. So you think the answer is yes, based on what?
Based on intuition first, based on a few historical cases that suggest that was a possible situation, and based simply on the fact that the human consciousness is so diverse, so powerful, so untapped, and so ununderstood, and by most people uncontrolled, that at this point we're not willing to put much of any limitations on what the human consciousness is capable of generating in itself, around itself, or in another. Be that other a human being or an inanimate object.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with a number of what we call Poltergeist fires in a blaze, which is not classically spontaneous human combustion in that the human body in most cases itself is not combusting at these fire scenes, but other objects surrounding usually a pubescent teenager will self-ignite under conditions that are just as bizarre and unusual as if the human body itself had burst into flame. Cases where calendars on walls, books on tabletops, bedding, mattresses, and so on will spontaneously burst into open flame, oftentimes in the presence of fire officials who are completely bumfuddled by what they're encountering.
Kind of like the movie Carrie.
Very much like Carrie, yes, indeed.
What about, I'll touch on it, the religious angle of this. What about those who would say it's an act of God.
Well, actually, that has been said, indeed said by the medical community. Back in the 1700s, when this was a hotly debated subject, pardon the expression, in the medical community, there were physicians and scientists in general who said, no, the human body can't combust. They had counterparts who said, yes, it does, because, well, here's the evidence. How else do we explain it? In those days, it was said by those who believed that spontaneous human combustion was a reality that in most cases these victims met the wrath of God. They were visited by God's divine wrath because they were living an immoral and intemperate life, and this was God's divine retribution for their miserable lives. Now, it's an interesting scenario. We certainly can't support that scientifically today, but once again, we're dealing with biological proceeds, heavily intoxicated individuals, people who are obese, people who probably were depressed, and all those factors, as we suggested earlier, can set up a state of consciousness which we believe can interact with the body's physiobiological processes to engender these very bizarre thermogenetic rises in their bodies.
What about the good doctor? He was just an older fellow. You said he was how old?
92.
92. Had his walker here. Mm-hmm. I suppose you might conclude that he was tired of living, but that's a supposition. Was he a drinker, heavy drinker? Do you know anything about the doctor that would have...
Dr. Bentley at one time did drink alcohol, we were told, but about 15 years before his death, he had completely given up that habit. He did smoke a pipe, and initially the people at the scene said, well, he must have dropped his pipe on his lap. This is the explanation that is tendered to get away from our conclusion that Dr. Bentley died of spontaneous human combustion. The disbelievers, the skeptics, the debunkers of SHC say, well, Dr. Bentley haphazardly dropped a pipe on his lap. However, as we pointed out earlier, dropping a cigarette, or in this case a pipe, in one's garment is not going to engender a temperature of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 hours, which is what is necessary to ash and bone inside a crematorium. And crematorium conditions were clearly not present in Dr. Bentley's bathroom.
Well, the whole house, at temperatures that hot, the whole house should have burned down.
Absolutely right. I'm so glad you made that point. When a whole house fire burns the structure to the ground, temperatures rarely go above 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about as hot as a structure fire gets. In a structure fire, if someone is entrapped in that blaze,
right,
the body, as we said earlier, can still be picked up, taken out to a morgue and autopsied. Just this past week here in Harrisburg, we had a crime scene. It turned out to be a crime scene. 2 people died in a house fire. There was sufficient evidence left in their bodies of those 2 victims that allowed the police to determine that these people had not died accidentally in a house fire, but they had been murdered, and the crime scene was torched to cover up the evidence of the murder.
Sure.
Now, in Dr. Bentley's case, the burning was far, far beyond that. We could have never expected any forensics people to find evidence of murder in Dr. Bentley's case.
No, I'm looking at the photograph. He's just flat gone.
Flat gone. Disappeared. Poof. Pile of ash. Secondly, in Dr. Bentley's case, while we said he was a pipe smoker, his pipe was found in its holder on a stand next to the chair where Dr. Bentley spent most of his days and nights. Now, if Dr. Bentley had indeed dropped a pipe into his lap and woken himself to find his garments ablaze, as you described happened to yourself, the last thing we think that Dr. Bentley would have done, being a knowledgeable physician, would have been to reach into his burning lap, pick up the pipe, put it over on a stand, then try to get up out of the chair, and with the aid of his aluminum walker, hobble the 5 minutes that it would have taken to get him into the bathroom to find a pitcher of water to douse the flame.
Well, to correct you a little bit, Arnold, I've never been ablaze.
Okay.
I have, as most smokers will attest, occasionally dropped a cherry in my lap. You know what I mean? The end of the cigarette dropped in my lap or on my pants. I've ruined more than one good pair of pants that way. But I guarantee you, the very second the cherry makes its way through its pants leg, I'm not popping, jumping, up and down. Moreover, I would expect that if I was completely dead to the world, had a heart attack, that cherry would burn down through my leg, through my outer flesh perhaps, and then connect with the moist tissue beneath and go out.
And we wholly agree with that. That would be our conclusion to that. That's what we would expect to happen. So then how do we come up with cases like Dr. Bentley in 1966, Mrs. Patrick Rooney back in 1985 in Sanitarium, Illinois?
What can you tell us about that one?
Oh, I tell you a lot about Mrs. Rooney. On Christmas Eve, she and her husband were in a farmhouse outside of Seneca, which is a town about 55 miles southwest of Chicago, Illinois. Everyone was expecting to see the Goonies the following morning, Christmas Day. Unfortunately, they left to the world a legacy, so to speak, that sounded more like a Halloween horror than the good time jollies of Christmas morning. Both Mr. and Mrs. Rooney died in a blaze in their farmhouse during Christmas Eve night, early Christmas morning. Mr. Rooney, we believe, according to the original newspaper documents that we've been able to acquire, died by asphyxiation. What Mrs. Rooney died of is something quite beyond asphyxiation and a fire. If we may quote from you, or to you and your listeners, the actual words by a Dr. Floyd Clendenin, a physician, I think they'll be instructive because just prior to the last break, you asked us how the medical community responds to these fire scenes.
Sure.
And we stated that either they dismiss SHC outright or they mislabel it. But there is a third response to SHC historically, and that's what Dr. Floyd Clendenin provides. He said, upon removing their bodies, we found the skull, the cervical, and half the dorsal vertebrae reduced very nearly to a cinder. Now, we're talking about Mrs. Patrick Rooney here, along with about 6 inches of a right femur that was her makeup. The rest was reduced to a complete cinder. The other parts of the body and clothing were reduced to a very light cinder having no shape of former body. Now, here's what I marvel by this, because much like Dr. Bentley did almost 100 years later, Mrs. Rooney burned through her kitchen floor into the crawl space beneath. And yet, table linen, directly above the hole to which her body fire augured itself was not burned. Now, the doctor said this: the skull and the hip bone of Mrs. Rooney were really the only evidence by which it could be told that a human body had been cremated there. Now, Dr. Clendenin used the word cremated. Now, that's really profoundly interesting historically and in terms of medicine, because the crematorium itself had only been invented 9 years earlier. And certainly a crematorium was not present in Seneca, Illinois, let alone in the farmhouse of Mr. and Mrs. Patrick Rooney.
Evidence of an accelerant?
No evidence of an accelerant whatsoever. That indeed was looked for, and none was found. Dr. Clendenin, now this is a professional medical physician back in 1985, pronounced cause of death a case of spontaneous combustion. He is not the only physician trained medically to say that people can, on rare occasions, die by this very aberrant, infrequent, and quite mystifying process called spontaneous combustion.
All right, well, a lot of this is by necessity going to be a little gross, but I've got to ask about this. I know a number of very obese people. Thankfully, I'm not one of them. But, anybody who's ever seen a fat fire on the stove knows that fat can burn like crazy and almost unstoppable. You can't throw water on it. You've got to smother it. And so there have been a lot of people over the years, when this subject has come up, who have said, well, it's human fat. How much evidence is there that it might be that?
Well, the evidence that has been said is copious.
Sure.
The evidence that what has been said can indeed explain these cases, we think requires or is dearth of support. Now, we're always open to learning things that we don't know about, so maybe one of your listeners can set us straight here. But in 20 years of talking to forensics experts, firemen, medical professionals, and laboratory technicians, we have yet to find anyone who can give us one working example of the so-called human candlewick theory actually proving true. Experiments have been conducted, we've done them ourselves, trying to take a piece of well-marbled fatty tissue, whether it's dry or whether it's been soaked for months in alcohol, putting a match to it and coming back a few minutes later or a few hours later and finding that well-marbled fatty tissue reduced to a pile of dehydrated dust. We have not been able to do that. People who grill meats on barbecue grills have never told us of walking away from the grill and coming back to find their T-bone steak, T-bone and all, reduced to a pile of dry dust on the grill. In fact, crematorium operators have told us that the most difficult cadaver to cremate and retort is an overweight, fatty body, which defies the proponents who argue that the overweight, fat, individual is going to burn him up in a smoldering fire to death.
Destroys a lot of myths.
Yes, it does.
Is there any evidence to indicate whether there's a commonality of where the fire on the human body starts? And it would seem particularly difficult, even if somehow the human body got ablaze, in essence, burn down. In other words, start at some top part of the body and then burn down.
You know, you would make a great fire investigator. You're asking the kind of questions that, unfortunately, some well-paid fire professionals in this country and overseas have refused to ask themselves. In many of the classic cases of spontaneous human combustion, the point of origin of the energy discharge appears to be in the solar plexus area, that is, in the lower abdominal region.
Uh-huh.
And what we suspect happens, and indeed in some cases has been confirmed by eyewitnesses, the energy that begins at that point in the body radiates outward like a human fireball. Whatever is beyond the radius of that fireball escapes significant damage. So the radius of that fireball beginning in the lower abdomen is perhaps 1.5 feet.
Okay.
And what is beyond that radius, say the lower legs or the forearms, which are outstretched from the center of the body, would escape damage. And that is indeed what we find in many of these cases.
All right, then. My brain says to me, what about what this person has digested? In other words, everybody remembers from high school with the chemistry sets that occasionally when you would put the wrong things together, your little test tube would begin to smoke and get hot as a firecracker. Now, is it possible that it's a combination of things ingested by a person?
Diet might indeed play a factor. This is, again, something that fire professionals are not trained to gather evidence about at a fire scene. We've attempted to obtain that information. As you might imagine, it's very difficult to come by. We have to, speak to the next of kin and talking to them in this kind of a situation is always a very delicate topic at best.
Of course.
In Dr. Bentley's case, we were able to get some information on his diet, and friends of his told us that he'd spent the last 2 years of his life subsisting solely on a diet of shredded wheat and coffee. Now, if we were Dr. Bentley's body, we think just out of spite, we'd, lash back, fiery rage at him for subjecting us to such a horrible diet.
Yes.
But facetiousness aside, there may be some organic process that went on in Dr. Bentley's body with that accumulation of caffeine and fiber and some other factors that, could have helped biochemically to cause his body to suddenly burst into a fiercely raging inferno that lasts probably for only seconds.
Do you think there could have been some sort of that's a long diet of two things, and I wonder if that could have created some sort of permanent chemical change in the doctor's body.
It may well have been, but we'd have to work with some organic chemist who would know more about, the actual mechanisms that such a diet would engender in the body. At this point, we're not willing to rule out much of anything.
Uh-huh. Is there any way, this is probably a silly question because you don't know what causes it, so how are you going to know what prevents it? But I've got to ask, is there a way to prevent going up in flames?
Well, when we hear people talking about having explosive tempers, thank you. Having red-hot anger and having fiery red rages lashing out at themselves or at others. We've alluded to earlier, people seem to be depressed or morose in many of these classic cases. We think all those factors, again, set up a state of consciousness whereby the body becomes more inflammably prone. So to avoid those conditions, we would suggest that one has a well-balanced, cool temper, good emotional outlook on life, maintain a good, healthy diet, and beyond that, at this point in our research, we really can't offer any real security.
Well, all right. That to me means there's lots of people ready to go up if it has something to do with temper. Larry, hold on. We'll be right back to you, and we'll begin to take telephone calls. Not put on the bulletin board because this is a copyrighted picture, and apparently it's been ripped off in the past. So we're not going to put it on the electronic media, other than I'm showing it to some people on video. And for example, I just showed this to somebody who said, "Gross, yuck, nasty, what a way to go, oh my." That was his response to seeing a photograph. So we're going to put it in the newsletter. He has given permission for that. To get our newsletter, which continues to have these kinds of documentary evidence in it, to get our newsletter, you may call 1-800-917-4278. We'll get this in the next newsletter. Again, our newsletter number is 1-800-917-4278. All right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read facts I've got that I think Mr. Arnold will find interesting. Get to a couple of other facts questions, and then I'm going to open the phone lines. East of the Rockies, the only number not given, it is 1-800-825-5033. That's 1-800-825-5033. Mr. Bell. Larry. In the spring of 1964, I was living north of Denver, Colorado, in an apartment. I was single. On a Saturday night, I'd been out drinking, dancing. Got home around 2 in the morning. It was cold, so when I got in, I sat down on the couch about 6 to 8 feet from a gas wall heater. I went to sleep sitting on the couch. I woke up at about 4 a.m. My right knee was hurting. I just went in and went to bed. I woke up Sunday at about 10 in the morning. My knee was still hurting. As I looked at my knee, I had 2 large blisters just below the kneecap on each side of my leg bone. I figured I'd burnt myself some way, so I went out and got the pants that I'd had on at the time. No sign of any hole burned in the pants or any sign of anything. By Monday, these 2 burns were bad enough that I had to go to the doctor. He couldn't give me a clue as to what caused them, but the burn holes went to the bone. It took quite a long time to get them to heal. The 2 scars are approximately the size of a dime and about an eighth inch deep. I've never figured it out, but I've always wondered. If you have the time, what does your guest think? That's from Stanley up in Bothell, Washington. So, Larry, what do you think?
Well, we'd be conservative and initially say that we might want to consider attributing those knee burns to radiant heat from the gas heater that was about 6 to 8 feet away. Now, we'd also want to say that we'd like very much to know more from Stanley about the details of that case, if photographs were taken of the burns, because there are aspects of what he's described in that fax to you that sound like it could be spontaneous human combustion, which he survived. This would not be the first time when individuals have suffered partial self-immolation and have lived to not only ponder the question, but to, be completely baffled by what happened to them.
Can you give an example of that? Somebody who's begun spontaneous combustion and not combusted totally?
You bet. Let's pick this one. This is one that we happen to like a lot. The date is October 1980. The victim in question is Peter Jones. He was living in Central California at the time. Here's the scene. He's sitting on the edge of his bed one morning getting dressed. His wife, Barbara, is standing beside him. Barbara told us that she looked down and suddenly realized that smoke was billowing from the arms of her husband as though something was on fire. She began to pound him around the back, and her husband assisted in trying to frantically put out this source of combustion, whatever it was, and suddenly the smoke dissipated and was gone. There was no odor, there was no heat, there was no tissue damage to Peter, just gushing smoke. Mrs. Jones implored, "What was that?" And after she gained a modicum of composure, to which her husband retorted, "Beats the hell out of me." For circumstances that neither of them understood at that time, his body began to gush smoke in copious quantity. Now let's move forward a couple hours into the afternoon of that same day. Peter was out by himself this time, sitting in his automobile with his hands firmly gripping the steering wheel, waiting for a passing train to go by at the grade crossing, when suddenly, for the second time that day, the interior of his car this time began to fill up with dense bluish-gray smoke, gushing from both of his arms. Now, Peter told us that his shirt sleeves were rolled up, and yet the smoke was billowing from the flesh of his arms themselves.
Holy smoke.
And the car's interior quickly filled up with this pallid haze. And this time he told us the smoke had a distinctive metallic taste.
Metallic?
And he told us next that as abruptly as the second episode began, his smoking ceased. He rolled down the windows of his car, and the smoke naturally ventilated out. He proceeded to cross the railroad crossing and never told his wife about that second incident for several months. Now, if the Guinness Book of World Records has a category remaining calm under fire, we would like to nominate Peter Jones.
Phew. Here's another thing. Many times at the scene of what appears to be spontaneous human combustion, it is said there is a sweet smell.
Correct.
Well, I was in Vietnam, Larry, and I can tell you there's nothing sweet about the smell of burning human flesh. And so why would there be this difference? I mean, it's a high human blood normally.
You have confirmed to us what friends of ours they ubiquitously, universally tell us that one never forgets the accurate measurement for
That's right.
flesh.
Never.
Never forget it. It lingers for months at a fire scene. Sometimes even we've been told for years at a fatal fire scene.
Yes.
However, spontaneous human combustion is not typical. And one of the hallmarks of classic SHC is that there is a dearth, a complete absence of that normally characteristic noxious smell. If there's an odor present at all, it's been described to us repeatedly as being perfume-like, redolent, sweet-smelling. In one case from Illinois that we document for the first time publicly in our book of Blades, the son of the victim told us that when he walked into the home of his mother, the whole house smelled as if it was pervaded with hickory incense.
Hickory incense.
Mm-hmm. That was how he described it.
So that would give credence to the theory that there's a chemical change in the human body before it combusts.
Most likely, yes, indeed.
All right. Our engineer up at the network sent me a fax here and wants to know, could it be a focused microwave frequency beam? In other words, indeed, you can be cooked alive by microwave, or that specific very narrow beam happens to be passing through the area where the person is sitting or whatever.
We completely concur with your technician's theory. We have in our book cases where radar technicians have been burned by their radar equipment. The PayPal radar units on Cape Cod in Massachusetts have been known to catch hang gliders aflame when they've flown in front of those very strong microwave transmissions, yes. So that's a little esoteric theory, but it has historical precedent, and we certainly could not dismiss it.
Well,
we also speculate that the planet itself, under certain conditions at certain places, might produce naturally microwave-type radiation, so that if a person is standing at the right place but at the wrong time, their bodies could begin to burn from the inside out.
Okay, Larry, when I was younger, I was a microwave engineer. I did that for a lot of years. And I used to work on towers, and I did some really stupid things in my time. And I can recall being almost at the 300-foot level on a tower on top of a mountain. And I was standing there working on a VHF antenna mounting, and I was strapped in. And all of a sudden, I noticed my leg was getting hot. And getting hot and hotter and hotter. And I looked down, and I was standing right in front of a microwave dish. So microwave definitely cooks the human body. There's no question about it. But in terms of causing it to go ablaze, and then once again, we get back to this problem of the amount of water present in the human body. I can understand that I could begin to microwave my leg, and if I stood there long enough, literally cook it. But ablaze and to consume the rest of my body, it doesn't track.
Well, something has to generate enough heat energy in the body that is the equivalent of 34 million calories. That's how much heat would be necessary to cremate a normal human being, say, weighing 160, 170 pounds. 34 million calories of heat energy is released in a Jesus combustion classic case. Now, here's the point. How can that be generated? Where could the source of that energy come from? We're devoting a third chapter in a place to looking at the physics and indeed the quantum physics of spontaneous human combustion. And we do come up mathematically with a source of that kind of energy that could trigger 34 million calories heat release almost instantaneously in the body. We're getting down into the subatomic physics of the human body now. But the mathematics say that this can happen. There is also a new science called new chemistry that is finding ways by which organically temperatures of 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit can be generated instantaneously at the nano level of the human body.
All right. Art, please ask Mr. Arnold. This is, look, folks, this is a little gross, so if you want to tune out, tune out. But these are legitimate questions. Please ask Mr. Arnold if he can provide information about a related destructive phenomena, spontaneously exploding heads. I believe there was a case reported about a half year ago of a chess player whose head actually did explode while in deep concentration during a game. All over the spectators. What a mess. Bill in Monroe, Washington.
Well, we've heard, I believe, of what Bill's referring to. That was a report that was carried by the tabloid Weekly World News. And as such, we give that report very little credence. The Weekly World News is one of the reasons that most people think spontaneous combustion is nothing more than a tabloid myth. And that paper in particular repeatedly runs stories about this phenomenon. We've tried to track them down, never knowing where one might find a credible lead.
Of course.
And with only one exception have we ever found there to be validity to their stories. The rest of them have no support so far as we've been able to ascertain. And the reason that we needed one story and credibility was because we had already investigated the case. Ironically, what they wrote was absolutely
with regard to?
That regarded a case in upstate New York in 1986. A retired fireman named George Charred. We devote an entire chapter in a place to his amazing internal incineration.
All right, let's get your book is very impressive, Larry. It's almost 500 pages long. It's well documented. It's got a lot of photographs in it to prove what you're saying. Where do people get your book?
Our publisher would love you for asking that question.
I'm sure.
There are two ways. One, they can go to the local bookstore and either purchase it off the shelf or insist that it be ordered in business and be one of the hottest books of 1996. Or, as a favor to your millions of listeners, we'll be glad to send the book out directly to them from our offices here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
The price of the book at either location is $24.95. It is hardcover, has line art, photographs, as you said. It's in excess of 500 pages, actually, when you count the front matter.
All right.
If the listener is in Pennsylvania, you're going to have to add a $1.50 sales tax. For you United States listeners, we will pick up the shipping.
I'm going to ask you a question, Larry. I'm an author, too, as well as an author. I wrote a book. And I know that autographs are really, really valuable commodities. Would you be willing to autograph copies for people? Just sign your name?
Absolutely.
You would?
Absolutely.
If they order from you directly?
If they order from us directly and they make that request that it be personally inscribed to whatever name they want in the front of the book, we would do
really?
that. No charge.
Oh, really? All right, then look out, because here it comes. All right, how do they order? What's the number?
The address to order by mail is 1025 Miller Lane, Harrisburg, PA, 17110-2899. Make your check or money order payable to PSI, and the amount again is $24.95. If you're ordering from Pennsylvania, add another $1.50 for the sales tax here in PA. For overseas or out of the United States orders, write to that address. We'll send you a mailing form with all the necessary details, and we'll post it out to you immediately after getting the payment and return mail.
All right, is there a 800 number?
Unfortunately, at this point, no, there's not an 800 number.
All right, then give the address again, if you would, please.
1025 Miller Lane, Harrisburg, PA,
right.
17110-2899. And the phone number for people who would like to call us either to request ordering information or to talk to us about cases that might prove to be valuable leads to our research. That number is 717-236-0080. That is an Eastern Time number, and we'd appreciate calls during normal business hours.
717-236-0080.
Correct.
All right. I've got an awful lot of faxes here. About 15 years ago, my husband was preparing a salad in the kitchen when his back spontaneously caught on fire. Everybody panicked, but it went out by itself as quickly as it began. His shirt was not burned or scorched in any way, nor was his skin. There was no fire nearby. Don't know if this qualifies as spontaneous human combustion, but it sure was strange.
Well, our first response is it certainly does sound strange, and it certainly does sound like many of the cases of spontaneous human combustion that we have already documented historically in our book of Blaze. We would very, very much like to hear from this woman. Specifically in 1905 over in England in Lincolnshire area, there is a servant girl who was sweeping out the broom. Using a broom to sweep out the barn. There we go.
Right.
The homesteader walked in and discovered that his maidservant had her back aflame. Until that point, she was oblivious to her predicament. Only when he started yelling at her that she was afire did she realize that indeed her back, as this lady wrote in to you, her back was aflame. So in many of these cases, this is a painless phenomenon. To the person who responded earlier who said that This is pretty gruesome stuff, and what a way to go. Well, yes, it is indeed what a way to go. It can be instantaneous or nearly instantaneous, unlike most forms of death. And unlike many forms of death, it also appears in most cases to be painless. And besides all those things, it gets you in the history books.
All right, well, that leads us into this then from Brian in Iowa. Please ask Larry Arnold if any of the instances of spontaneous human combustion have been witnessed.
Yes, Brian, they have. The case that we gave you a little bit ago about Peter Jones and his wife, clearly that was doubly witnessed once and singly witnessed a second time. We devote another chapter in our book specifically to the eyewitness cases. So once again, those who claim that spontaneous human combustion does not occur are going to have to deal with the eyewitness testimony. People who have seen it happen in others, people who have survived it and reported seeing it happen in their own bodies.
In what percentage of the cases, Larry, has it been documented that the people had really foul, fiery tempers?
The percentage is quite small because, as we said earlier, getting that kind of information from the very get-go is extremely difficult to obtain. But we have enough cases, enough individuals for whom we've been able to get psychological profile background that suggests that that can be a viable component to the onset of these amazing fires. I'd say the total count is about in the range of 8 to 10 cases where we've got individuals who have told us, or relatives have told us, next of kin have said that these people were very angry, very depressed, hyperactive, really classic type A personalities.
What about an actual, actually we're going to have to break off because we're at the top of the hour, but I'm going to ask you, and then we're diving into the phones here because every line is lit and we've got to get going on that, but I would think in some cases people would feel their body temperature rising and would have actually documented putting a thermometer in their mouth because they felt oddly and noted a rise in temperature before the awful event. We'll ask about that when we come back. Larry Arnold is my guest. Spontaneous human combustion, the subject.